step outside and visit with you regarding your topic. So again, we thank you for being here today. We're going to start with Kenneth Ferguson, and after Kenneth will be James Allen.
Afternoon, Councilman.
Afternoon, sir.
My name is Kenneth Ferguson, and I was here just a few short weeks ago. When I was here last, I've been called into the office on 5 separate times over when I said that, the whistleblower law. Just a reminder, I have PTSD. My supervisor have accused me of everything they can think of. And as I mentioned, the very first words I said to the city council was that I was doing this under the Whistleblower Law Act. But I have been constantly berated by 3 separate supervisors and a co-worker. The co-worker was told by Rob, George, and James, stay away from me. On the last and 5th time, I was called into the office when they finally found something to write me up on. After being berated for a whole month during the major tournament, and that was the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, I was sitting waiting for further instructions of the day. Rob, who was acting supervisor, and Rudy pulled up, and Rudy stepped out and started accusing me of things that I had not done. And I asked Rob to several times to please keep him away from me because he was instructed to stay away from me. I did use a racial slur because after a whole month of being berated, I did use a racial slur as my my PTSD came out to a boiling point. And after a full month of being berated by my supervisors, being told not to bring their name up because they knew I'd probably come in here, that I was not to ever come before the city council again, and that was said by George himself. And on the matter of my service dogs, which was brought up, Cindy, who works for HR, had originally told me that Tim, who was acting supervisor at the time, I cannot have my service dogs out there. After I contacted y'all a few weeks ago, the very next day, I was allowed to have my service dogs. Cindy backdated, saying that the dogs were allowed to come over a year ago. She backdated everything, and according to mine, that's a big no-no. And this was sent in a letter. It was followed up by a registered letter. And in my knowledge, again, this is a big no-no. I have repeatedly asked George and Rob to allow me to use the internet to plug in a security camera so that my dogs will be safe when I'm not there to watch over them. They have failed to get back to me and have been since I have been there for the last time. And they blame me for the IT, or they blame the IT guys for not getting this done. I've asked the new supervisor, Scott, to look into it, and I've not heard anything. And I've found a security camera that runs on over 1,000 hours of data and does not need to be plugged into the internet. So I would like to be able to purchase that and use it to keep my dogs safe, because I don't trust, if I'm not there, somebody berating or harassing my service dogs, which is a felony. And I have learned, according to the supers, that I've interacted with it, and so I say, and they have chose me that they would make me pay in full violation of the whistleblower law.
Mr. Ferguson.
Yes.
I offer it to you again here. Thank you for speaking here today. Once again, I'm available if you'd like to sit down and talk.
Yes. When would you like to do that?
Well, if you don't mind, my email is easy to find, and if you'll email me, then I'll put you on the calendar. I'm a couple weeks out, and I know I made that offer to you last, but I hadn't heard from you.
Well,
so
last time was the first time I'd ever been in before the council, and I was kind of...
I understand, sir. We'll do what we can. Thank you for being here. Yes, sir.
Can I give this and you can look at it?
Yeah, if you want to hand it right over here to Mrs. Coggins.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Yes, sir. Appreciate you.
Next is James Allen, and on deck after James will be Linda Vaughn.
What a glorious day. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council, and happy belated birthday, Mayor Stanley. I look forward to a comprehensive presentation that gives the Council and citizens a true understanding of the condition of the water system in North Heights. Mr. Hartman should also update you on the findings from the Environmental Protection Agency concerning H2S gas emissions. I would appreciate if the citizens in the audience today that are concerned about the city not adequately planning and addressing water infrastructure upgrades in North Heights, would you please raise your hands? Thank you. The North Heights community is at a point in time that requires bold action from its elected leaders. Today, we should hear an update that outlines what a 10-year plan of action would look like to address the deficiencies in our water system. Specifically, we should hear what the first year of the plan of action would look like, what location would be specifically addressed for upgrades in that first year. The community should see the first year in the 10-year plan. Why has it not been made public by Mr. Hartman? When did you do the analysis to make that decision for the 10-year plan? What is the estimated cost for the upgrades? How will these funds be budgeted? Will the project be engineered and implemented by city departments, or will this be bid out to a contractor? What will be the expected time frame for start and completion of work? These are all things that you need to know in order to make your decisions in the budget process. Gentlemen, the work we are talking about today is health and safety issues. How long are you, as leaders, going to allow substandard infrastructure for your constituents? This investment is literally laying the foundation for future economic growth in North Heights, which benefits our entire community. Our community has accepted excuses far too long, almost 100 years. No more. The time is now for action. Look at implementing a plan to update the water system in North Heights and approve it in the upcoming budget cycle. Remember, action or inaction has consequences. Have a wonderful day, gentlemen.
Thank you, Mr. Thanks, sir.
Linda Vaughn, and after Linda will be Jeff McGonigal.
Tall people. Good afternoon. My name is Linda Vaughn, and I have lived in Amarillo my entire life. I lived half of my life in downtown Amarillo, and the other half I've lived in North Heights. And I am here, did not know what Mr. Allen was going to say, but I want to talk about an infrastructure upgrade. I think that it's necessary if we are to spur future development in North Heights, which to my knowledge is what I believe that each one of you on this board, this city, the city mayor, the city council, I believe that that is your goal. And I believe that you are here to work for the entire city. But the lack of upgrade to the infrastructure is one of the reasons that's preventing or limiting private development from happening in the North Heights area. It's one of the big reasons. To me, this is just my opinion, the city is hindering development by not investing in our area. A prime example of what could happen is the North Heights Linen Service. That's a new development, a wonderful facility with approximately 50 employees, a large contract. As far as the Metroplex, a linen contract as far as the Metroplex, daily coming in and out. That's a good start. That was a good start. And I believe that that kind of start it's a major concern. And how do we accomplish that if not by the city providing the infrastructure for that to happen? You know, small developers trying to build homes in the area, they've been hampered by the lack of improved infrastructure. No access or limited access to sewer, water, electricity. That's not the way to entice developers to our city. And I believe that that's your goal. And I am a little disappointed that what I see happening is not equitable across the entire city of Amarillo. The entire city is what each of you has been elected to be caregivers of. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, ma'am.
Jeff McGonigal. And after Jeff will be Timothy Ingalls.
Well, good afternoon. Mac Gun-Eagle, Amarillo, Texas. This is called The Color Yellow, and it follows up with James and Miss Vaughn. I wear this yellow shirt today not to just bring a ray of sunshine to this drab chamber, but make a statement that I love this community. I truly do. I wouldn't have run for mayor, wouldn't be doing this if I didn't. I truly do. Our city is simply named Yellow, or Amarillo, or as mispronounced, Amarillo. It's exciting to see so many gathered here beyond the ordinance. One thing these two issues have in common is life and death. Today, many gather to support a greatly malnourished part of the city in a greatly unhealthy city. A city with an unspoken standard of mediocrity or less, a divided city, a city that won't speak of the elephant in the room, a deep crisis of care, just ask Mr. Ferguson. Yellow, Amarillo, is the color of courage, will and strength as the solar sun shows us. Yellow is also the color of cowardice, as a weak belly shows us. We're living in a great time of cowardice, a time where talking the talk dominates over walking the walk. In May, this man, and I'll say a true man, James Allen, spoke here. He spoke of what we are here about today. He compared it to my childhood and father's birthplace, Flint, Detroit, Michigan. I clearly saw what he was talking about. Recently, preparing for the election and retreat, I tuned in to the last meeting. There stood James in his yellow shirt. This indicated to me, as he did with his words, that this man is truly a man of courage, a solar man, as well as a man who truly loves the all. He inspired me. The highest act is inspiration, greatly. This is a man who shows and is cultivating excellence in leadership. I know in my heart and mind he will do what it takes, what it needs to be done for all of Amarillo. Having this deep crisis of care, we need leaders of excellence, those who inspire and empower. Inspire and empower us to care, once again. Righteous leaders who bring together the all, not self-righteous leaders looking out for themselves and those of power. Who holds the leadership keys in this community of 203,000? Who holds these leadership keys? You five before us. In a time of great crisis, the greatest when humans lose their care, we need our leaders to rise above anything or anyone the city has ever seen. Greatness. The potential is there, but is the courage, willpower, and strength. We need that from all of you. P.S. The invocation as is self-righteous and disrespectful. A moment of silence is righteous and of highest respect. I conclude with, again, we are not who we think we are. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Jeff.
Timothy Ingalls. And after Timothy will be Dolores Neal Thompson.
Yep, you can bring them up. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, all. Mayor, Council, thank you for your time. This is just a quick starting place, I think, to discuss a street section that I live on, and I've been part of the neighborhood association for a while. So we're looking at Harrison Street right now, and there's been a lot of discussion with the neighborhood and the neighborhood association that people drive too quickly down this street. We've actually spent, 4 years ago, we spent a lot of time designing different options, which never actually made it through the political process. But I have two really simple requests for the Streets Department and for Amarillo. And that is, so this is the existing context on the first page. If you flip to the second page, basically, I'm asking that you remove the no parking signs on both Tyler and Harrison Street. So basically, during commuting hours, the street is designed to be a 2-lane kind of highway through the neighborhood. So the neighborhood used to be residential with slow streets, and then in the 70s or the 60s, the thinking was, let's get as much traffic through as fast as we can. And I would claim that that creates a big detriment to the community. It increases the speeds in our neighborhood where people play, people walking. And so there's many ways we can redesign this. And my request, the simplest way that we can just barely nudge the needle towards a safer street is to remove the no parking ordinance so cars can park on both sides, and it narrows the street width just a little bit if people choose to park there. And then also that we remove the center striping lane. Right now what you have is a strange situation where if a car is parked on one side, sometimes a lane is there and sometimes it's not, depending. So there's kind of like a 1.5 lanes, depending on if people are parked on both sides of the street or not. And so it's a very dangerous design. Now what I really want right now, actually, because I don't assume you all will make this decision immediately, I'd like to get this redesign or something like this on the agenda for a month or 2 months. And then I've been talking with the neighborhood association, and so then we could get more than just my own feedback to say, hey, yeah, we would like this redesign. I've already gone through different channels with this with previous administrations, and I just think a really quick and direct bring it to the council was in the best interest. So it's right in front of y'all. So any questions or comments, please let me know.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Dolores Neal Thompson. And after Dolores, Mildred Darton.
Good afternoon, Council. I'm Dolores Thompson. I live in Amarillo. I have a couple of things that I would like to address the Council about. The first one is about Old Route 66, Highway 66, Old Northeast 8th, and Amarillo Boulevard. There's been construction on Amarillo Boulevard for at least a couple of years between Travis and McMaster's. And I realize that that is part of TxDOT property. I have talked to Mr. Sneeder John. I have even texted TxDOT as well. But I feel like as fathers or as our leaders here in Amarillo, I would like to see that you all can contact the state of Texas. That area has been for 2 years a hard place to travel. I don't know how many cars come through there every day, emergency vehicles. That is the thoroughfare from the north side of Amarillo to the south side of Amarillo, from the south to the north. So that area, I think, needs to be cleaned up. I wish that you all would contact TxDOT, perhaps as city leaders, and ask them, can you hurry up and find out what's going on with that construction there? The other concern I have is Thompson Park. How many of you have driven down Thompson Park from the north on Northeast 24th between the golf course and Polk Street? And it looks like a desert over there. There are dead trees there. It's blank. There's no grass. So I bring that to City Council. Perhaps you can refer it to the Parks Department, and we can get something done about that. It looks horrible when you drive down that area. Just take a ride down there and see what you see. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dolores.
Mildred Darton. And after Mildred, Tim Gassaway.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Council. Mildred Darton, 79107 University Heights. I lay my head in North Heights every night, I pay my taxes every year, including every month I pay my drainage fee. I don't see anything moving the needle in my neighborhood. I've talked with a couple of you one-on-one, shook hands with the mayor. I forgot what I was shaking hands for, but I did. But I think it was about moving at the speed of trust. We move forward for a while, then we go back to the starting gate. We need to go on down the road, see more accomplishments, more things being done. A beautiful Amarillo. It can happen, it can be done when we work together at the speed of trust. We trusted when we voted. I heard your comments. I was satisfied. I voted. And I will continue to vote. That's the only voice the people that look like me have is at the ballot box. Some of them don't realize it, but I do. Several years ago, there was a question asked in this chamber, and I'm going to ask that same question today, because the last question went unanswered verbally, but it was answered by being neglected, overlooked. The question was, why are we replacing infrastructure in certain areas of Amarillo that are less than 5 years old, and we're not doing anything in our older neighborhoods? That question still remained unanswered. But it was unanswered by not doing anything. And Mayor, there has not been a disconnect in North Heights. It's been neglect. You cannot disconnect what has not been connected. North Heights has never been connected. We've been given promises, yeah, we'll do it, but you're kicking the can down the road. We need to stop. Do it, or just say you're not going to do it. It's plain to me, and it's plain to Ray Charles and Stevie Wonder. Nothing is being done in North Heights, but they run over me to pay their taxes. I don't get that. I know what taxes are supposed to do. Taxation without representation is wrong. But while we sit here, talk, life rolls on. But I want to let you all know that there is a reality in reaping what you sow. In the voice of Dr. Charles Stanley, you're going to reap more than you're going to reap later than you sow, and you're going to reap more than you sow. Let's do the right thing, because the right thing is the only thing to do.
Tim Gassaway, and after Tim, Edith D. Tomaso.
Good afternoon, Mayor Stanley, staff, and council. My name is Timothy Gassaway. I reside at 1604 Northwest 20th in North Heights. I come today to just lend my support to James Allen and all of the efforts to get something done. We've been needing something done for a very, very long time. I actually have left Amarillo, came back to Amarillo, and the same problem still exists. I'm not pointing a finger at the council today, but we should look back at all of the councils since the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000. I mean, it goes on. And what I want to leave with you guys today is hope that you guys will operate and be the council members and the mayor that the city of Amarillo deserves. And these are some qualities that I think you guys should bring and think about when you deliberate. And it's not just you guys, it's a staff. Because these failures could not have happened without a failure in our staff. If that's city manager, if that's department head, of that supervisor or employee. But we all should be operating from a point of these things: empathy, responsibility, strength, protection, fairness, fulfillment, freedom. I'll say freedom again because we have an issue, as we know, that deals with freedom, and you guys are dealing with it. Opportunity, prosperity, community, service, cooperation, trust, honesty, and open communications. If you guys would operate with these values, we'll be okay, even in the environment that we're in. North Heights, as you guys are already studying, does not have representation. Far too long this has went on, and we need to change it. I leave with this. I'm not pointing my finger at you guys because you guys are new, but you guys have a great opportunity to set a new bar and a new standard for Amarillo. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Edith D. Tomaso, and after Edith, Jesse Fremer.
Yeah, I'm little. Good afternoon. I'm Edith D. Tomaso. I write at 1613 B. Bowie Street in Amarillo. And I'd like to start off with a Bible verse that kind of guides what I'm going to tell you. To do justice, to love mercy, and to walk humbly before our God. As I understand it, unlike other neighborhoods in Amarillo, North Heights has constantly been overlooked for the water and sewage improvements, even though they pay the same utility tax that everybody else pays. I realize that the topography in there is somewhat challenging. However, I do think that somebody with a civil engineering degree could figure out how to make it work. If they can solve the problems at T-Anchor, I'm certainly that they can solve the problems in North Heights. To me, the exclusion of North Heights is tantamount to redlining, which is illegal and discriminatory. I urge the City Council to rectify this egregious exclusion and modernize the water and sewage system in North Heights. Thank you.
Jesse Fremer, and after Jesse, Alma Swain.
Jesse Fremer, 5723 South Milam. I'm here to compliment you guys because you've inherited a terrible situation. You did not bring this upon our city. The city gave it to you, and you're the ones we're asking for help for. And that is to try to figure out a way to resurrect a wrong that's been done to our citizens in the north part of our city. And we're here to try to support you on this effort because you're having the agenda issue 7E to discuss how you may address this problem. I know you're going to have to do the enterprise money to find out if you can afford it. You've got the big sewage problem that you're developing out here on the northeast part of Amarillo. You've dealt with that. You dealt with the problem down on Hollywood Road. You got that because of the flood that you inherited. Congratulations, you guys. You got through that problem. So you've been faced with a lot of problems. So I compliment you on what you're doing, but I'm not going to sit back and not hope that you won't try to help these citizens recognize you're about them and we're about them. So I helped on the St. Francis Hospital trying to get that thing developed into something other than just sitting there as an empty building. That's on the north side of our city. We got the Linden Service set in. We got the Wofford Center developed for the YMCA. We've got the Thompson Park now working at a better facility than it was. You didn't inherit that. The prior council took care of the Thompson Park situation. But you also inherited a $35 million debt for removing this building and moving it to the east side of our city. And you inherited that debt. You got that foisted upon you because the former council put that. Those are issues that makes us comfortable with the idea that how can we make certain the funding goes where we really know there's a problem and it's been long at rest because we haven't addressed it. It's not your problem, but your citizens that are going to have the opportunity to address it. And I appreciate you guys listening to us, but I appreciate your effort. Each one of you have been great council members. I appreciate your help. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Alma Swain. And after Alma, Jamie Farron.
Good evening to everyone. I'm not going to take much of your time. I just want to readdress what the lady was saying about our sewer system. I don't know what to do, but I've called the city over and over and over and over about my water at my house. When I turn my water on, you can smell the sewer. I have to wash my clothes 2 or 3 times. That just doesn't make sense. And I called the city. I said, well, can you come out to check to see why I still have dirt in my sink when my water goes out? But to me, that's a serious thing. And I live down by Ross Rogers where the sewer used to run. So I just wanted to readdress that again. That's a problem here in Amarillo. And I also wanted to readdress the thoroughfare where those people have been working for 2 years or plus. It doesn't take that long to fix what they were fixing. And half the time they're not even there working. So if they do need to get that part cleaned up. So I'm not going to take up any more of your time because I think you already know what the problems are in North Heights area. North Heights is located in the city limits of Amarillo, just like all of the other areas. And I don't feel like we need to be in one little seclusion to where they don't do what they do for the other areas of this city. So I just think that we should think about that, and I just hope that all of you do a better job than the ones we've had in the past, because they didn't do a good job at all. So I'm looking to you to get together and do what you need to do for our city. And I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Madam.
Thank you.
Jamie Farron. And after Jamie, Patrick Miller.
I'll let you go first.
Good evening, fellow citizens. Thank you so much for your time. Just a few comments, if you don't mind, on water infrastructure in general, also related to North Heights and some other areas. In the year 2023, the major cities in the state of Texas reported upwards of 80 billion gallons of lost water. That's a future that's coming for your community, and worse futures, in fact, than that if the infrastructure issues aren't addressed. We could look to other communities like Flint, Michigan, and others to see things other than simply monetary damages that might surface in the future if these issues aren't addressed. But let's put numbers aside. In work, I deal with a land of numbers and models and risk assessments. That's difficult to do in a presentation like this, so let's put that aside, and I'll just ask you to engage your imaginations for a moment. Imagine a future in which those issues simply aren't addressed. Imagine a future in which calls for loss of money, somebody needs to answer for this, right? Imagine a future in which the calls of injustice by other fellow citizens increase and wind up in the public sphere in communities past Amarillo, past the Panhandle. Imagine a future in which the list of major Texas cities that report, again, upwards of $80 billion of lost water. Imagine a future in which Amarillo joins that list and other lists where, instead of numbers, in the 80 billion range. There are instead numbers of deaths of our fellow citizens without addressing infrastructure issue that is coming. So all I ask is that please, fellow citizens, mayor, council, that you address these issues as quickly, as efficiently as you possibly can. If you need help or would like additional words with me, I do risk assessments, environmental regulation. I would do whatever I can to help at absolutely no cost for what it's worth. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir.
Patrick Miller.
Good afternoon, Mayor Stanley, esteemed council members. My name is Patrick Miller, and I'm a proud lifelong native of Amarillo, Texas. Thank you for providing your constituents and fellow citizens with the opportunity to present our concerns regarding the decades-long neglect of our historic neighborhoods of University Heights and North Heights, Amarillo. As a former elected official, I can certainly empathize with your current predicament. Having only had a mere brief tenure in office, yet having to make decisions which resolve issues which preceded your time in these aforementioned positions. However, now is a time for progress. During the allotted time for an update regarding infrastructural improvements, we certainly may learn of significant progress in the discussions regarding the myriad issues pertaining to the willful neglect of our historic neighborhoods. Furthermore, it is our hope we learn today of a plan to install or repair drop inlets and raise roadside tabletop inlets in order to improve drainage throughout North Heights, University Heights, and our entire city. Additionally, we hope this update includes a plan to resume a collaborative, comprehensive review of zoning in North Heights, Amarillo to ensure Amarillo residents may live, work, and play in areas conducive for their health, safety, and economic independence. Moreover, we hope to learn about efforts to prioritize fire mitigation safeguards by installing new lines to increase the flow of water and the pressure between fire hydrants and fire engines during crises and fire emergencies. On behalf of the concerned citizens of Amarillo, which you represent, thank you for your time today.
Appreciate you, sir.
Mayor, that concludes everyone that has signed up today. I do want to state for the record we had 2 written public comments received, and those are in front of you in your packet and have been emailed to each of you.
Okay. Appreciate that, Mrs. Coggins. Do I have anyone here that would like to offer public comment? Yes, sir. Mr. Brown, if you'd come forward. I'll come back to you next, Mr. Coble, and then behind you as well.
Good afternoon. Sorry I'm a little late. Thank you all for giving me an opportunity to speak today. This is kind of the speech that I gave my daughter probably 2 years ago when she asked me why our neighborhood was as it was, didn't have certain amenities like businesses and like movie theaters or skating rinks or any kind of those things besides Wonderland. Wonderland had already became a little played out to a 8-year-old at that point. And I told her I had to give her a history lesson about every city USA and how the infrastructure, the time, how history played a part in building of cities. Had to go all the way back to the 13th Amendment, of course. There was always a part of a city that was inferior, and there was a part of a city that was built inferior, infrastructure-wise, because there was a sector of population that were just coming into its own as far as freedom and liberty and the pursuit of happiness and all of those things that United States Constitution speaks about, and just about every state's Constitution speaks about. And when you have those infrastructure problems, you go back to the business side of things. Businesses want a solid footing, a solid infrastructure, a solid foundation when they're out looking for places to, there's growth in all different directions. But when you have infrastructure problems, as we do in our North Heights neighborhoods and some other neighborhoods, San Jacinto and even East Ridge and Mesa Verde, the whole north side, then you have a lack of growth as far as businesses. And then when you have a lack of growth as far as businesses, then you don't have a stimulating growth of families and as such that want to come to that area. So that's what I really want the council to take a look at. If we're talking about the growth of Amarillo, Texas, then this is imperative to get on top of. Thank you.
Thank you, Tremaine. Commissioner Coble, if you go ahead and come on down.
Good afternoon. My name is Warren Coble. I was born and raised here in Amarillo. I live at 1307 Northwest 13th. I've never left Amarillo. Amarillo is my home. I come particularly to speak about the H2S gas. I've had conversations with the mayor. I've had conversations with Mr. Floyd concerning the gas. It really hasn't gotten any better, but here's the thing. Mr. Floyd said he's done the water and the pipelines for 30 plus years. But even in the 30 years that he's been here, no one has ever sent a letter to North Amarillo saying, that's just not a bad odor. That's toxic gas. I did my research on the gas, and this gas is not much different than the gas that was used on the Jews by Hitler. Do your research. Why haven't someone says, if you smell it, don't try to trace it, because if you find it, it might immobilize you, and if you lay there long enough, it will kill you. H2S gas is what I dealt with for 20 years. I worked at the Phillips process plant. When I first found out that it was H2 gas was at bicycle riding, July the 23rd, 2022. Frida Powell was there, the chief of police was there, Mrs. and Mrs. Vaughn was there. A lot of us were there to enjoy the day. And so this massive amount of odor came, at least the place that I could trace it to was 1.5 miles away. And that day was enough to burn your nose. Nobody knew what it was, but I did, because that's what I did for a living. H2S gas kills. I want to call the people over there inhabitants, because certainly a city would deal with inhabitants getting gas, but not their citizens. So I want to say we're citizens. It continues to be the same thing. Minor things have been done. In fact, when they put in this device, it was too far north to do any good. And so now it's starting to back up. And now, instead of just being on 24th and coming back about 1 mile, now it's reached 2 miles into the community. And it's along 15th and Madison in that area. My problem is, what has this gas done to North Amarillo? I've been told to be patient. My problem is, I'm afraid that some of our citizens are going to become patients in the hospital. It's time to do something. We can't do minimal amount of work and say this is what the minimal requires. Come on, guys. Help us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ma'am in the back, if you go ahead and come down next. Mr. Feingold will get you after her. Afternoon.
How y'all doing?
We're good, ma'am. Thank you.
Very well. The first time I came before you guys, it was about the overpass on Hughes, from Hughes to 3rd Street. Guys, we have kids on school buses as early as 5:30, 6:15 in the morning. It's dark. It's dark going across there. I mean, and the, what do you call it? The concrete, the holes and all of that kind of stuff. I would rather see you block it off for even a week to get that done. Don't let us have a tragedy like with other buses with our children in there. Let's think about our kids. My next thing is, thank Dolores Thompson, because that's what I wanted to talk about also. I get these threatening, intimidating letters from the city about weeds. But then someone starts to build an overpass. The weeds are taller than the concrete blanks now. I mean, that doesn't make sense. And then, we're drivers, so there's someone that don't want to be behind you, that wants to be the leader, that's going to come and cut in front of you. Okay, so there's 3 or 4 wrecks. I mean, if we can finish the loop, we can finish that overpass over there. And we ask that we get that done. Those people that use Amarillo Boulevard, the majority of them, they're coming from East Ridge, they're coming from Hamlet, Mesa Verde, and now guess what? They're going down Hastings. And you know what Hastings looked like. For years I have heard that they're going to widen Hastings. Remember, we had a family of 5 that got killed on Hastings. But guess what? Hastings, there's a new area of houses down that street and down Broadway. But Hastings is still narrow. I mean, you think of those people that are working in that area and they're in a dump truck or they're in a semi truck, and here you in a little car. There's nowhere for anyone to go but to hit each other and those kind of carrying on. But, let's kind of work North Amarillo. I mean, I see the working of everywhere else. As a matter of fact, I got lost in South Amarillo, and I've been a citizen here all my life. But I got lost because I didn't know all of that was over there. But I was curious because they keep telling me that it's over there. So I'm being nosy, and I go over there. Dang, hell, we live in Canyon, don't we? I can't tell we in Amarillo. So you know what? Come over here with us. Build us a Walmart neighborhood store. Build us a store other than United. Hell, they don't even sell what we eat.
Miss Lila, can I have your last name again?
Mitchell.
Mitchell. Okay. We know you reside in the city limits, so we needed to get you down for our...
Oh, did I come up here like that?
Not at all.
Oh.
You asked me how I was doing, and I should have waited to answer. So I spoke too soon. No.
Those are the way things go nowadays, Cole Stanley.
Hey, thank you for speaking here this afternoon. We appreciate you.
Hey, look out for us, okay? Don't have me to come back and I'm upset. Because I cry, and then I cuss, and then you don't like me anymore.
I promise. We always if you come back upset, it'll be at Don Tips again. It won't be at the rest of the council. He's the only one you've been mad at so far.
But you know what? I could get mad at you too.
Okay.
I know you that well.
I won't press my luck. Thank you, Miss Lila. Mr. Feingold, you're next. Then we'll do Mr. Skank after that.
How can you follow that? Alan Feingold, 2601 North Grand Street. First, I want to suggest that you take very seriously the man in the blue shirt. H2S gas is famous as a hazard for people working in the oil field. You can ask half the firms in the Permian Basin about it, but one thing that you can do is create a vent pipe, even if you have to go 4 or 5 miles with it to get it to someplace where it's less likely to affect the neighborhood, even while you decide what the permanent solution to that problem should be. Second, I would like to suggest to you that you do a review, a performance review of the projects that were authorized 4 years and 7 months ago under the Community Investment Program. There are several that I think would be very illuminating to the council if it were to take a look at it, and I would like to give 5 sheets, one for each council member.
I'll take them. Thank you, Alan. I'll hand them out.
You can see the number on that project. I'm just going to describe it very briefly for the persons who have attended it. It was a project to repair or to replace the sludge rakes in the clarifiers on the Hollywood Road treatment plant. Now, I don't have time to go into a long explanation of what a sludge rake is, but I think you gentlemen are somewhat familiar with this. And you can also see that $6 million was appropriated for this purpose, and it was supposed to be spent in fiscal 2021, fiscal 2022. I would like the individual who was ultimately responsible for this project to tell this council what happened to that $6 million. Thank you.
Thank you. Afternoon, James.
That's tough to follow. Anyway, I want to send out first that the North Heights needs your help. Figure it out. Let's get some action going. We have 2 big votes coming up in November, and it isn't even for the President of the United States. It's for the Charter, and it's for Sanctuary Cities for the Unborn. We got 2 big issues on that. I want to start with the Charter. That committee, it was tough to watch because everybody in there was led down a little road with the consultants, trying to figure out several really hard propositions. And I understand that, but I want to focus in on the one that's probably, it was like watching sausage being made, you know, you've used that before. And you tried to work it out. And then in the last meeting, let's throw a wrench in it and try to split up the big proposition that was going to go on the ballot, which would have been confusing to everybody in the country, including the city, and split it into 2. And the discussion around that was pretty disappointing. It was left with the consultant to split it into 2, right? And so as of today, we haven't seen a copy. I hear there might be an email coming that has it split to where we can see the verbiage, because as you really realize, Proposition C would have had trouble passing just by the simple overwhelming confusion that's listed throughout all of that. Now,
they've had it for 12 days, and the changes to the props makes it where there would be 5. In my opinion, the meeting's not over. You guys need to get together and decide if those are the right wordings that you want to have. Because everybody was so worried about whether or not, will the people vote yes on this? People vote, and then you were giving voters such a hard time between several members of the committee about how we have voter fatigue, or they don't know what they're doing. They're going to be overwhelmed. Let me hit you with what I think needs to happen. This next election, you need to go for 1.5 years. That gets you to November of 26. At that time, kick in your term limit, where you have 4 and 2. 4 run for 4, 3 run for 2. And increase the council to 7. And then, at that point, you go to 28, or you go to 26, really, and you're going to be electing those 3 new council that went for 2, go to 28, and they're going to go for 4. Now we're off and running. We're not out into 2030 and stuff to get this action happening. And it can be done simple like that, and then we can just have you guys for another 2 years unless we kick you out. And then that other thing, one more thing, on the sanctuary cities for the unborn. It's fixing to go on the ballot. Everybody needs to know the campaign should be started on whether you're against it or for it. I'm against the trafficking and roadway thing. The Dixon ordinance really, I think, lacks compassion and love. It happens after the baby is aborted. And I guess I can let this go now. Thank you for...
Appreciate you, James. Thanks, James.
And $7.5 million with the AEDC needs to go to the voters on that stuff that's going on at the Kids Inc. That's a type B project.
Thank you, sir. Do I have anyone else here who would like to offer public comment? Mr. Massey, come forward, please.
Mayor, Council, I just was coming to talk about the empowerment zones that's on the agenda. We own some property in Eastridge, and I appreciate the empowerment zones and what their benefit is for the community, but they've left out the business corridors in some of those communities, much like Eastridge, and also the barrio that didn't include the east side of Ross. And I think for the empowerment zones to really work to where we can get businesses into those communities to help those communities flourish, I think extending those and including the business corridors would be gratefully beneficial for the communities. And just wanted to, I think I've sent y'all a proposed map for Eastridge. I didn't do anything for the others. North Heights and San Jacinto, they kind of run together, so it doesn't affect them as much as the barrio and Eastridge. But I think it's something we should look at redoing. I understand that you have to have limits on where it can go and whatnot, but I think if we could just take it a block past and not have hard boundaries like Grand and Northeast 24th or Ross, that it would greatly benefit those communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Shelby. Appreciate it. Do I have anyone else that would like to offer public comment here today? So we're going to go ahead and close public comment. I would like to just give a statement of fact that I hope you guys agree with. Public comment is good for all of us. It's good for us. The old saying, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. So we don't take your comments in the wrong way. I appreciate the respect and honor when you guys come up and say, look, we're not pointing the finger at you, even though we're pointing at you. Like, we know. We're seated here because you elected us to be here. Some of these problems that you're looking at are 60, 70 years old. Mildred said you reap what you sow and that it takes a little time. you're not going to be disappointed with this council. It's going to take time to sow this seed and turn this around and go the other way. And so we're not going to fix these problems in 6 or 7 months. But you'll see, I think, in this next budget cycle that we've got an intention to move that direction, to put the monies where we can, to look for the infrastructure opportunities. We've been in conversations for the last year with different developers and entities that we're trying to work towards some type of business park and some affordable housing over on that side of town, which drives that infrastructure that way and justifies the cost that we need to put over there. So it's a bigger problem. The public comment is well received. We appreciate it. It's been here for a while, and we're not flush with money. So, I mean, the solution, honestly, would be to just raise a rate and just throw money at it. That's not the best solution. You need to have a plan in place. You need to be strategic. And we've seen previous councils where, let's just go grab a whole bunch of money. Well, if you don't have a plan in place, that money doesn't necessarily go to work like it needs to. So staff will work on this for you. Council will work on it for you. And we appreciate the public comment. We take it in the right manner. So thank you guys for all participating today. We do have a couple good updates for y'all as we move forward. So, Council, I'd ask on item 7A, does anybody here on Council have any needs for a review on an agenda item?
Yes, sir.
Okay. We are going to talk about a key component here. We have Miss Emily Kohler, I believe, coming forward to bring up item 7B. This is a neighborhood empowerment zone. This is key to what you guys are asking for when you're talking about grocery stores, businesses, and things like that we're working towards. Ms. Kohler, how are you today?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Thank
Good
you.
afternoon. So I'm going to provide a short update on the performance of the Neighborhood Empowerment Zone program and then request some direction from you on a potential boundary expansion. Let me see if I can get this slide to advance. Guess it helps when you turn it on. So currently we have 5 zones in Amarillo: North Heights, Barrio, San Jacinto, Eastridge, which all follow the adopted plan boundaries. And we also have a zone in downtown which is limited to supporting residential projects only. Just a little bit of background on the program. So this was first established by resolution by the council in January of 2023. And cities are allowed to set up these zones through Chapter 378 of the Texas Local Government Code. And they're designed to incentivize private investments in areas that have seen impaired economic growth. The specific incentives are all outlined in the state statute and include development fee waivers, property tax abatement, and sales tax rebates for projects that get certified and meet the criteria. When the zones were established in 2023, the direction was that this would be a 5-year program to support other programs in the neighborhood plan area, that we would try to do as much as possible in a short amount of time to try and jumpstart redevelopment. So like we've created the business improvement grant as part of this revitalization initiative. The investment amount for a private property owner or a business owner is much, much lower for this program. So it allows businesses to qualify for incentives that otherwise wouldn't meet those thresholds for this citywide incentive policy. So to date, we've seen 14 projects come through the NEZ program. All of those are requesting the fee waivers, and then there's one potential tax abatement. Many of these are tied to the new business improvement grant, so those are recent applications and pending completion. This totals an estimated private investment amount of about $500,000, and that's a incentive provided by the city through the fee waivers of about $2,800 to get that return. The number of projects is a little slower than what we had anticipated, but it's entirely new for Amarillo. We've never done anything like this before. And we think that once we have some more completed projects, there'll be more interest in the program. But as Mr. Massey said, we have had some inquiries from property owners that are, some of them are like just outside the neighborhood plan boundaries, and then others are kind of further out, which doesn't make as much sense to entertain. But staff has looked at this, and we think that by following those exact neighborhood plan boundaries, we did just sort of cut off key commercial corridors along the plan areas, and some important intersections as well. And those all serve nearby neighborhoods. We've also identified certain older commercial corridors in city plan, so continuing a focus on revitalization of the older neighborhoods in city plan. There are some areas that are outside the existing plan boundaries identified. That would include both Southwest and Southeast 10th, Southwest 15th, Paramount Boulevard, and then Southwest 6th between downtown and San Jacinto that were also identified as potential areas to encourage business redevelopment. So we'd just like to get some feedback from you today on whether you would like to consider making some boundary updates, and then if you would like to have staff just focus on analyzing those commercial corridors right adjacent to the plan areas, or if you would like us to look at potentially expanding and including some of the additional commercial corridors that were also included in city plan. And this is done by resolution, so we would just bring maybe some options back to you to look at, or a proposal back for you to look at, and they could be adopted just by amending the initial resolution with new boundary maps.
Questions for Mrs. Colwood?
Emily, is the only incentive just the waiver of those fees?
No, there's a property tax abatement, so that's just the city's portion. The county potentially could participate in those if it was a large enough project and they wanted to. And then there's also a sales tax rebate that ends up actually being a more valuable incentive. And we haven't had anyone take advantage of that, but I think for small businesses that might be the best incentive option.
Okay, so a lot of those were private. I mean, were they residential, the list that you showed? You said only one of them has exercised the request for the abatement? Yeah, only one of them.
And we're still working through that application with them. And then most of the others are related, they're small businesses, they're related to our business improvement grant program.
How long does it take when they make their request before we approve? Or
so the development fee waiver, if that's all that they're requesting, that is if they meet the criteria, it's we can do that in a day if we need to. The property tax abatement, sales tax rebate, those are economic incentives, so those have to go through the council process. So that takes us a little bit longer.
Okay, like months?
Yeah, I mean, just for us to review it, make sure it qualifies, and then to be able to get it on a council agenda for you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions?
I don't know, what is staff's thought on these boundaries?
I think that the request is definitely reasonable for the neighborhood plan areas. That there probably aren't going to be that many areas. If the direction is to just look at those nearby corridors that serve those neighborhoods, and I think that that's reasonable, and we probably should have looked at that to begin with, but we were just focused on supporting the plan areas. And then as far as the other areas, I think I just wanted to bring that to you as an example of some of the recommendations that are coming out of city plan, and that there are other business corridors in Amarillo that are in need of this. They're just not within our focus areas with the neighborhood plans.
Go ahead.
What do you feel like as far as success of this project? I mean, has it been really good, or what can we do to improve it?
It's a good question. I think that these are new programs in parts of Amarillo that honestly aren't used to working with the city in this way. I mean, we get questions like, wow, so we just turn this in and you write us a check for half of it? Like, what strings are attached? What are you going to make me do? What else is out there? So I think it's just been kind of an education process. And I think we're getting close to being at that point where they understand that there aren't strings attached and that, you know, this is a new commitment by the city to work on these areas. So I think we get a few things visible on the ground and are able to promote it more. We'll start to see more significant projects.
What I was noticing is, and what was brought up today is the North Heights area, business development and that kind of thing. This would really help them out, right?
Yes, and we do have 2 projects in the North Heights plan area that we're working with currently.
Okay, so we are working in the neighborhood to help develop them more, or?
Yeah, and the neighborhood association has even put some of their plan money into the business improvement grant as a way to offset the property owner expenses even further. So between development fee waivers, a potential property tax abatement or sales tax rebate, the business improvement grant, the contribution from, I mean, it's a pretty nice package for small businesses in the North Heights area.
Great, great. We might just need to get that word out.
Yeah,
there
definitely.
And maybe have some more meetings in that area. I noticed how the Barrio has used it a lot in San Jacinto. I would love to see North Heights up there amongst the rest of them. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Emily, I think in my opinion, I think it makes sense to look at those corridors that support those areas that we already have zoned. I mean, to expand it just makes sense. If those are the businesses that are supporting those areas, then, like you said, maybe it was a oversight that we didn't do it originally, but I think that's a good idea.
Okay.
I appreciate it. I just want to see some more firmed up boundary lines and maybe a future council presentation like you were describing earlier.
Okay.
Ms. Kohler, good job on that. I think Mr. Allen would agree with me. Demographics are important. And those demographics can drive capitalism that we need from the private side. That infrastructure piece is a component that needs to be improved upon. We address that. You're addressing the incentive side. That leaves it up to the neighborhood, the community, to improve those demographics and to draw in that capitalism that is the only way that any of this functions. So without that, then really we're not going to have anyone taking us up on those incentives. And so these incentive guidelines are very well thought out, they're structured, and they answer the criticism that we've taken for a long time of why do you only give an abatement to a large company that doesn't need it, that was coming here anyway? Why would we not do something for our smaller business, for that grocery store, for that neighborhood service? Well, we are. And I think that is a good opportunity here for us to be able to show you again that this is a good plan, and I think the infrastructure piece is needed. I agree with you, Mr. Allen. But then this piece contributes very well in our planning. And so Ms. Kohler's done a great job of pushing this forward, and she actually has quite a bit, I think, of momentum. It's been slow coming, but that is how this works, and it's a bigger lift. So thank you for your hard work on it.
You're welcome, sir. Thank you.
Do you have what you need from us? I think we would tell you we're good with expanding the corridors and also the additional items that or areas that you've identified.
So we'll look at areas immediately adjacent to our adopted neighborhood plan boundaries and then look at the new commercial corridors identified in city plan?
I think with the response that we've had, and it's a slower build, that I don't think we're running much risk to go ahead and expand to those other identified areas.
Okay.
And these are all areas that are focused areas. They're needed. And they're in areas that we would improve those demographics if we had additional businesses.
Okay. We will work on some maps and a proposal and bring that back to you. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, ma'am. Emily. Moving along to item 7C, we may have Mr. Hooper coming up here to walk us through some street projects that we're trying to get going.
Yeah, I want to kind of give you a little history about what we're doing as well in the street department. It's nice to be up here and not talking trash with you and talking about another subject we're pretty passionate about. So the purpose of this presentation, we actually had a staff met with the mayor. We were discussing some actual issues that were out on the streets last week, some things that he had noticed, asked some questions about, and then that conversation turned to what else could we be doing to help with our street maintenance program? So we went back, we had a pretty quick turnaround to get this presentation ready, and I thought given some background on what we do as a staff in the street department, as well as what some of the challenges that we have in front of us are, would be very beneficial for council, because we'll be asking for your feedback, and we also have a couple of recommendations that we would like to make at the end of this, just for you to chew on. We can come back at another meeting and talk about this if we actually get some true direction on what you would like to see from us. So let's talk about the street division a little bit. I might mention that everything that we're talking about today is about the maintenance side of the street division. There's two different things that we discuss. One of those sides is the capital project side that would have the large construction projects and things like that. This is the street maintenance side. If you look at it as, Alan and I were talking about this today, if you think about like what you do for maintenance on your vehicle, you change the oil, you change the air filter, you rotate the tires, you do all those little things that you can do pretty easily. That's what the street department does related to streets. And then if you have a major overhaul you need to do to your engine, to your transmission, that's what the capital project side does. So this is the Band-Aid side. This is the maintenance side that we're going to be talking about today. One of the things I thought might be beneficial is just to kind of look through our organizational chart. This is our street department, and I know it's very difficult to see all that, but I'm going to blow up a specific piece of this that you can look at as far as our operations are concerned. We have 94 full-time employees in our street department. And if you zoom down into where our operations process is concerned, we have 5 supervisor positions there. Each of those are responsible for different things within our street department. Jeremiah Johnson's responsible for the minor patching and pothole patching operations. Our supervisor, Raymond Burr, is responsible for, he has a tear-out crew and a stabilization crew that works along with the other crews. He also does the major patching and traffic control operations for all of streets. We have Rolando Valdez, who takes care of all of our utility cuts, and we have a lot of those every year, whether that's via hot mix or via concrete, wherever those may be, where we have a utility repair that we have to make. He's in charge of all that. He also is in charge of our hauling operation, our haul trucks. And then we have William Burks, who has a pretty heavy load as well. He has crack sealing, seal coat, alley seal, and sweeping operations. We have a supervisor position that's vacant right now. They're in charge of unpaved alleys, our stockpile locations, mowing and spraying. Those responsibilities are being spread out through the other supervisors at this time. Our street division is responsible for quite a lot. I thought this was some interesting stats I wanted to pass along to you. And when you talk about centerline miles and lane miles, there's two different conversations that you hear, and those things get really confusing, especially during budget time. We'll focus on center lane miles, and that's if you just drew a stripe down the middle of every street that we have, that's a center line mile. We get into lane miles, that's where you take that and multiply it by how many traffic lanes or 12-foot lanes there are out there. But today we'll focus on the center lines. If you took the centerline amount of streets that we have, just over 1,000 miles, that would basically be one lane road all the way to San Diego, California. If you took the miles of alleys that we maintain, that would be a little over 500 miles, which is the same equivalent as driving to San Antonio on one lane. And then if you combine both of those, it's like driving to Washington, D.C. So it kind of gives you a perspective of exactly what we have to take care of each and every year. Over the past 5 years, we've increased the number of streets through development and growth by 24.83 miles, also increased our alleys by 11.44 miles. We still maintain all of that with the same amount of staff that we previously had and the same amount of equipment as well. We're responsible for crack sealing, pothole patching, and when we say a pothole, we're talking about a 3x3 area or smaller. A minor patch would be 10 by 15, and a major patch is anything larger than that. And again, these are just patches. This is not a reconstructive method that we use. Also, we're responsible for our street sweeping, in-house seal coating, alley seal, unpaved alley repair, and unpaved maintenance of the streets. Our workload distribution, if you divide that out, each of the equipment operators are responsible for about 44.8 miles of centerline roadways, and most of those equipment operators have to be combined on one job, so you can't just send them all out to do different centerline miles, but it gives you a little good perspective of that. Pothole crews are responsible for about 523 centerline miles per crew. We have 3 of those 2-man crews that patch potholes and do minor repairs and some of the major repairs as well. The normal best practice for that is somewhere between 250 and 300 centerline miles worth of streets, and that's something that APWA puts out, and this is all dependent upon what type of equipment that you have. That's just with the match type of equipment that we have. Weather is a big factor for us. Summer is our busiest season, obviously. Most treatments are only possible in the summer due to optimal temperatures being lower than that here in the Texas Panhandle. We have challenges here that they just don't have in other places in the state of Texas if you go south. Now, if you get up into Nebraska and Wichita, Kansas, and places like that, they have similar weather to what we have here. And we rely on some of the factors that they use for treating their pavement in the wintertime and look at what they're doing as well. Alternate methods can be used for patching operations in the winter, but they're generally temporary. If we do like some cold mix or things like that, that we have to come back in the summertime and replace those. Crack sealing can also be performed in the winter months as well. Just a quick snapshot of our weather, and it looks like my tabs got messed up. They're still okay on my sheet, but basically what this was is just showing what our weather conditions are in October. We see our average lows. This is all from the National Weather Service, around 45. So if you're going to reach our optimal temperature to do work in October, we have to be at that 50-degree point and rising. Sometimes we can do things in the mid-40s, but you're generally not going to get there until the mid-afternoon, so it's really difficult to do a lot of work in the wintertime. And as you look down through there at the low temperatures, the further you get into the deeper part of the winter, the more difficult it is for us to do work during the day consistently. Even though we do have days where we can do work, we'll see a string of days where it's 60, 70 degrees in November. We're out working when we can. Our rain days are about 72 days a year, and you can see on the precipitation there as well that we have that to deal with. And some of those ice storms, snowstorms we get, they can linger on the streets for 3 to 4 days. That keeps us from doing any work out there. And generally during that time, our street division is switched over into snow and ice control. Just one of the things that we get every week, we get a weekly update that comes to my office. This is what that weekly update has on it. You kind of zoom into the bottom. Some of the things that I look at there are how we're performing when it comes to the things that we have in our budget narrative, the goals that we've set for the year. As you can see, those bars that are green, the higher they are to the right, the better off we are in those categories. We should be at about 75% right now in all categories. So we're way ahead in some, and we're a little bit behind on others. And that's usually the case that happens as we kind of rob Peter to pay Paul in some of those areas. So we get really ahead in one area where the need is, and we'll fall a little bit further behind in other areas. The lowest one on there is the alley seal, and I'll show you the numbers for that here in just a moment in a better graph. So what we did, I wanted to show you what we've done in the past calendar year. We went from June to June because it's a good way for us to give you a snapshot of what we've done over a year. And our fiscal year is October to the end of September. We would only be able to give you 2 months worth of data right now, and it really didn't look that great. So we wanted to go back and give you a snapshot of the full year of what we've done as far as repairs. Our unpaved streets, we've done 33 miles. Our major repairs, we've done 3.4 lane miles. Our minor repair, we've done 990 of those, and that's 198% of what our goal was for the year. Our pothole patching is at 168%, at a little over 4,000. Our goal is 2,400 in a year for potholes. And it's not just a goal that we set to say, okay, when we get to 2,400, we're done. It's based on requests. So when those requests come in, we try to respond to them within 3 days, get those potholes repaired. We had a very wet year last year, as everybody knows. The longer that water sat on the streets in some of those areas, the more the conditions deteriorated and the more patching that we've had. So they've done a good job of keeping up with that. We're really proud of the work that they've done there. 24 brick repairs, that's the most time-consuming repair that we have, that we do. If you've ever seen them out on a brick repair, a 15 by 15 area can take them 2 weeks just to put the bricks back in place because of the way they have to do that. Our crack sealing, we've done 17 completed segments there. As far as our alleys are concerned and the maintenance levels there, same thing. We've done 38.6 centerline miles, 1.8 centerline miles of paved alleys, 1,102 minor repairs, and also potholes repaired. We've done 3556, which is really just about at our yearly average. If you look at all that on a chart, this kind of gives you a better perspective of what we've been able to do this year. And there, the far left is the number of potholes that we've repaired compared to our goal of 2,400. And then you see in the middle, that's the number of potholes repaired in paved alleys at 98% of the goal, at 75% into the year. And then you see that we're ahead as well on our minor asphalt repairs and in the streets and the alleys as well. Look at the next slide. It shows where we're pretty much on track as far as the asphalt major and minor repairs there as well, but where we fall behind is the alley seal. Part of that is by design. We can't do the alley seals until we do all the patching and we prepare those alleys for those seal programs. And we can do that on into the fall. It's not as temperature regulated as other things are. So I think they're really doing a very good job of keeping up with the things that we have in front of us. I know we hear a lot of times that you guys are really, really behind on potholes. And I think you can see here that we've worked. In fact, the amount of overtime that we've worked this year to keep up with the requests as they've come in is pretty astounding. And it's somewhere around the $300,000 mark coming into this meeting just with overtime in the street department. So when the call is there, we're trying to get and respond to them as fast as we can. As far as the alley maintenance is concerned, our best practice, and this is kind of where our discussion went the other day. We're talking about alleys and streets. Our best practice would be a 6-year maintenance cycle on our paved alleys. We have 231 miles of paved alleys. A 6-year cycle would be 38.5 miles a year. We're projecting that we'll do about 15 of that this year, which puts us really far behind when you think about what that would be a 15-year cycle, and that's actually increasing it from what it was the year before. So one of the recommendations we're going to be making is that if we could move all our street crews to alleys to utilize our existing budget for repairs in the alleys, we could set that goal at that 6-year cycle and make it 38.5 miles. In order to do that, you would have to also have something that would be working in the streets as well. And that's kind of where our conversation went the other day. So, and this is, again, we're just wanting to put together, we would have to come back to you with a plan. So don't think this is in stone. This is just, we would have to come back with a solid plan, come back to council. We want to throw some numbers at you that if we did do a street maintenance RFP that would take care of the patching that is out there, equivalent to what we think we could do in a year, it would probably be somewhere around a $5 million contract, and that would be a 1-year street maintenance contract for someone to come in and take over that portion of it while we focused on the alleys to bring those back into an acceptable range as far as the cycle is concerned. One other thing that, and that contract, by the way, would be for pothole patching, minor patching, major patching, and crack sealing. It wouldn't include the items such as chip sealing, major reconstruction, mill and fill, microsurface. We have a summer maintenance contract that addresses those type of repairs that would be separate from this one here. And again, this is just an option and open for discussion. One other option that we could discuss as well, and we would plan to bring that back to you if council so desired, is we've also looked at some other types of equipment that there are. Technology has changed over the years with the pothole patching trucks that we use and a lot of other cities use. They still work very well, especially for the larger pothole patches, but there is equipment out there that's more automated that takes one person. It doesn't take traffic control. It has a snorkel on the front. It's all operated from the cab of the vehicle, and they can turn out some numbers. Just to give you a good example of that, talking with some people from Nebraska, I believe it was, where we were talking. There's several cities that are using these, but they went from doing thousands of pothole repairs like we're doing. We were at 4,000. To now they're doing 50,000. Where we're doing 10 a day per truck, they're doing 50 a day per truck with the automated systems. So there's some other options like that would cost a little bit less money. There's $300,000 a piece. We could even discuss that during the budget time, or if you wanted us to bring some numbers back to you as options as well. But really what we're trying to do is just put some information in front of you to let you know what our issues are, what we're facing as far as the streets and alleys. We have the thing that we are behind on is the actual construction and maintenance of those streets on that end of it. But we realize that, and we know what those are, and we've identified those streets too. We also have a street assessment that we do that identifies all the PCIs for those streets, and that is part of that construction side as well. So with all that said, I know it's a lot of information to digest, but I wanted to bring that forward to you for a discussion piece so that you could give us some guidance on what you'd like to see from us.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Donnie. Questions, council?
Donnie, is the best way to get information, do you want, I mean, obviously we get a lot of complaints about roads, right?
Yeah.
Not saying y'all are doing a good job. You're doing a great job. But if that's one complaint we get, that's a big one. Is the best way for a citizen to make known maybe a road that's bad, a pothole, to call in? I mean, is there a way to report that? I mean, because you'll always equate, you got 5 guys up here. We don't know everything's going on in the city, right? It requires a partnership with everybody out there to say, hey, this is what's going on. Is that the way? I mean, because obviously there's some areas of town that are rough.
Yeah.
And potholes and that type of deal. I don't expect your crews to go out there and drive every road or street and say, well, let's put that on the list, let's put that on the list. Is that the way to do it?
Well, there's a couple things. I'll answer it a couple of ways. One, we actually, our street department, they're out looking for them when they're out. Our transit department does a great job. They are constantly calling us because they're out. They're driving the buses and they're out there. They do a really, really good job of reporting to us because, as you say, we're not going to know about it. This is a reactive response. Our response is reactive whenever we have potholes or something that's going on with the street. So for citizens, yes, to call us at the street department or to send an email to someone in the street department. Even 311 is another option. I know we're working on technology as well, and I know we've said that before, but I know it's in the works now where we can have something that would be an easier way for citizens to report that. Just being out on site, being able to take a photo and send that through an app or something. I know those wheels are in motion out of our wheelhouse and over in IT, and I know they're working hard on that. So I would say the best method would be to call. And I would also just recommend, and we've said this before to our staff, they need to call us and let us know. They're out on the streets. We have a lot of vehicles that are out on the streets, and we rely on them to report that to us as well.
Okay. So I know we're down a supervisor. Are we at capacity? I mean, are they doing all the work they can do? I mean, basically,
Absolutely. Yeah, we're doing as much as we can do every day. In fact, like I said, the overtime has been pretty high this year because our goal is to address these things within 3 days if we can get them. Now, a minor repair, which is bigger, or a major repair is going to obviously take a little bit longer to get those. But I know that they're doing everything that they can with the staffing levels that we have and the equipment we have.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Donnie, on the $5 million not to exceed on that one-year contract, is that absorbed through would that be absorbed through existing budget, or would we have to find new funding?
We would have to find a funding source for that. There would have to be that. And let me tell you how we came up with that number, too. We went back, and we have just a little over it's just a little over $3 million in our budget for maintenance and repairs. However, that number is just for materials. That's the materials we buy. We don't charge ourselves our own labor and our own equipment. So we went back and put a number to that and said if we were hiring out what we did, it was somewhere around $10 million. But that's for streets and alleys. And so we split that. That's where we just came up with a guesstimate of $5 million, or probably what we could do in a year. But yes, we would have to find a funding source.
With spending $300,000, and that's just to date, right? So we've
Correct.
got a couple more months on that. So
And I think, was that the calendar year, Alan?
What's that?
Calendar year on overtime, is that what that was? Yeah, that's for the calendar year. We wanted to look at a snapshot of that.
Are you at the point of being able to add another crew? I mean, maybe more cost efficiently than
We
paying
are.
overtime to that much?
And that's a great question, and it's something that, when we compete for those CIP items, that's something that we've put in is for a couple of more patching crews. I know that we've had that since about 2018. I think one of the better ways to approach that is some of the newer technology I was mentioning a moment ago that takes less people to operate that. I think we could do with existing staff that we had because it only takes one operator. You don't have a traffic control person, two people inside of a patching truck that are out in the middle of traffic standing there. This is a totally guarded position. It's more safe and all that. I think we would be better off with exploring some new technology that takes less personnel to run. But we are definitely ready to expand, I think, with the growth that we've seen in the community.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Councilman Shirley?
All I'd like to say, Donnie, y'all are doing a great job.
Thank you.
I've traveled throughout the city, and I'm seeing patchwork all the time. And it's really good and refreshing to see that new little chug hole fixed. So thank you. Relay that to your team. Because
Absolutely will.
I think they probably catch a lot of bad publicity, but for what we're giving them and what they're doing an excellent job. Thank you, Donnie.
I really appreciate that, and I will pass that along.
So, Mr. Hooper, thank you for taking your time to meet with me. I guess it was last week. So with the flood and with the amount of moisture that we have, we're seeing, I'd say, an increased rate of damage. We have more washout. We're floating more of that asphalt, driving through those flooded areas. I think our goals are great goals for where we've been. Personally, I think our goals are low, not meaning that the guys aren't getting enough done. meaning that I think this council would support prioritizing roads at double the goal rate. So I think if I were looking for a way to double the output of what we're putting into the roads, looking for a 5-year plan, meaning we're gonna need some time to get to these mill and overlays. So as you drive down Bell Street or whatever street you're looking at, it takes a while to get those funded, designed, where you can go in and you can remove it, mill it, overlay it, whatever you're looking at. And that's really what some of those roads need. Well, if we put them 5 years out, in a year or two, I think we're going to have such a dilapidated, deteriorated condition that we can't make patches work, and that we're patching and we're just chasing ourselves. So what I would like to see is, 2 contracts instead of 1 contract, or multiple contracts for the $5 million. And then I would love for that to be, that is that capitalism piece where now you have a contract. So if your company can go out and get $2-3 million worth of work turned out between now and winter, then council would be looking at funding that again. And so I would love to see our crews catching up on those alleyways and working in those alleys, taking care of those citizens, and us try and subcontract and spend some money in the right way of prioritizing. We need to extend the life of some of these drive areas 4 or 5 years before we're going to get to that overlay condition that we can do. So I think that our road condition is deteriorating quicker than what we projected. I think our goals have been in line, but we don't normally see a flood like we've had. That was once in 40 plus years. And then I think we also have seen quite a bit of rain over this year. So if we can gear that up, what is your opinion in having multiple contracts? Rather than giving one company a $5 million contract, I would rather have, 2 or 3.
Well, you're right on track with what we're thinking. In fact, after we met, Alan and I got together, we started talking through this, and I'm always trying to think ahead, not to, hey, if we did the work and it goes aside and we don't have to do anything about it, great. But we put together an RFP already, so it's ready to go. And it has multiple contractors in there. So if there's a ward, you'd basically have multiple contractors that you could choose from. That, if this one's full of the work, this one can start after that, this one can start after that. Or if this one can't work, we go to the next bidder in line. So it was for multiple contractors, thinking the same line that you are. So then what you're proposing may look a little bit different than what it looks like on the black and white paper. You're not offering a contract with an identified project list to a bidder. What you're saying is we would set up a process in which we have multiple contractors that are approved, and as soon as we can identify and work order to them, then they're able to go ahead and put that in their schedule and get to it. Correct, and I think that's, when we discussed it, it was it's exactly like what we're doing in the street department. We get a call, we create a work order, we dispatch a crew, and they go take care of it. I think It could work the same way. Okay. And I know we have Osage Street that, is in the list, and we had infrastructure that had to get out of the way first. Don't want to be the guy who paved the road and then tore it up. And so that's a big one. I know the community's pushing on that, and it's rough to drive down in a certain section for sure. What is your opinion of this $5 million goal? Is that a large amount of money? Would you like to see council come back in this next budget cycle, which is just a month away, try to put that in as something where, no, that'll get us going in the next 4 or 5 years. If you'll put that $5 million in there over again, that will make a large dent. I think the answer to that is whatever service level you wish to see is what that number needs to be. I mean, we could say, I'd love to see 200 million. I mean, we could really go out there and do some things. But I think for what we would be capable of doing with contractors, I think that's a pretty good number. But I also think that we're going to have to evaluate it. I mean, we may put that number out there if that's what we decide to do, and we get into January and we've exhausted it and we're done. Mm-hmm. And then we would need to reevaluate and say, well, it wasn't enough. Or we may get to the end of the year and we've only exhausted $3 million of it, and we'd have to evaluate the other way. So I think for us, it's at the service level that we're providing now. It's taking that number and pushing it forward. I think we could get the amount of work done. Now, we've done this before. 2007, we did something similar, but it was just the opposite. We hired contractors to work in the alleys while we finished and worked in the streets, and it wasn't near as big of a contract.
Okay. And then what about the projects we've already got designed? They're coming next council meeting, is that correct?
For the summer maintenance program?
Summer maintenance program.
Correct.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So we're talking about a $5 million in addition to council. So we already had $8 million worth of projects designed. We probably won't get through all of those in this paving season is what the latest update was. But we want to get those projects pushed out and awarded to the contractor. Then we want to have this in addition to that so that we have, I think if we say $5 million, that's a good start, but I would hope this council would be able to prioritize more monies as we look over the winter. And then I would love to see staff look at winterization projects where we can use different technologies. And I would think council probably would greatly entertain the technology. So if it's $300,000 for a truck.
That's what we're seeing now, and this was today. I was trying to find some pricing on it. I've actually got 2 calls in, have not received a call back at the end of the day. But this is actually a product as well that works a little bit differently than what we are used to seeing with hot mix patching. And you're capable of using it in the winter more than you would be able to use things in just the summer months. So we think it's something worth looking into, and I think a combination of both would really help us out.
We would love that conversation to be had at this budget session.
What would you, so you want me to bring this back to budget?
Or before.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So that we can move in. I mean, budget will start. You'll have one more council meeting and then budget. So if you're ready on the 23rd. If not, we'll catch it on the 29th.
I think we just want to make sure we have a good plan in place that we can put before you that's well thought out before we make that request final.
Well, we appreciate you moving this direction. And then the only other piece would be kind of the supervisory piece. Do you think we have the staff that we could allocate to oversight of these contracts?
We do.
Okay, because I think that's the quality piece. That we don't just want to turn out a lot of work.
Right.
We want to turn out work that lasts.
Yeah, I think that we do. We looked at our existing staffing levels and what would happen if we made that shift and who would be responsible for what, and I think we could make that work.
Very good. Any other questions for Mr. Hooper? Okay, man, let's get after it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Donnie.
Let's go ahead at 4:50 here and take a 10-minute recess. We'll come back after that for State of the City update. That'll be a quick one.
Hey, Donnie.
Mine is up next, so item D here is State of the City event. I really just need to have a little discussion with my council and go ahead and make sure that I'm heading in the right direction, because I think I've been ramrodding this one. So item 7D is our State of the City event. As you guys know, the mayor and council are supposed to provide a State of the City once a year. We've been doing it in May. We felt like it'd be more appropriate to do it in the later part of the year, since we had a city manager search that's finalized, and he'll start here in a couple weeks. So we will be in a better position to report to our city on all of the things that we're doing. Usually this is ran in a more professional, business-like manner. It's a seated event. Most of the time it's done, or sometimes it's been done during business hours. I think that this year what we would like to do is maybe take the focus off of council and maybe what council's doing, and you know, hey, look at what we've accomplished for you. I think what we would rather do is put the focus on the citizens, on the stakeholders, the nonprofits, and our staff. And so what we have in this town is some local heroes that have been honored for saving lives and performing their job duties. We have some citizens and committees and groups and nonprofits that are turning out more food than ever before in feeding those people that are homeless and need the greatest level of help. We also have just a fun-loving public that enjoys getting together on a Sunday evening and enjoying pretty weather. And so, like, if you look back on last Friday, the Cinco de Julio, right? So our Independence Day +1. It was a fantastic turnout. Nobody can prove me wrong, so I've been telling everybody we had 15,000 people there, because I don't think you know, but it looked like it. Yeah. Thank you to Deepak. He's the only one who was impressed. So, but I want to shine the spotlight on what we do in this community. If you look at the quality of life and the things that we're trying to drive from our pillars of customer service, making Amarillo a friendly place to visit, a good place to run a business, the best place to raise your family, to grow your life around some good people and your friends. This is what our State of the City should be about. So we've invited Aaron Watson to get up on stage and play some music. We will be running some video, probably 3-4 minute videos showing different things from Amarillo Police Department, Amarillo Fire Department, our Independence Day event, things like that. And then we're going to bring some of the staff up to get recognized, some of the accomplishments that they've made. And we will get a little business done during that time, but it needs to be more of a county fair, blue ribbon, boots and jeans type event, in my opinion. So I think that's more of what this council is. I think these are your meetings. We work for you. And so we're going to throw you a party, and we're going to do it under the what we call the pavilion, which is the old Santa Fe Depot back here behind us. And so it'll be an outdoor event. It'll be August 25th. That's a Sunday. We'll start at 6. We'll probably be done around 9 o'clock at night. And so we'll get the business done, but we'll also have some food trucks out there that people can eat, and it'll be a good time around your community. And that's really what this council is more about, is community. Even though we do want to run this city like a business, where it starts is with relationships and with people. And so we want to shine the spotlight on those people that are doing the most for our community. So really, this update is for my council to give me a little feedback. We have fundraised this event, so it's tasked upon us to use private funds, not to use taxpayer monies, to go and do this. It's considered a campaign event, so I think if we're going to campaign, it'd be better for us to campaign about you guys and less about us. And it needs to be more about what's getting done in the community, not what's getting done in the mayor's office. And so this is funded. We do have Aaron Watson scheduled. We have a couple of other people that are willing to play. I think the live music aspect is a draw. I'd love to see 2,000, 2,500 people show up. That would be a record turnout, I think, for what we've seen. And then I like the video and being able to have things that are up and playing for people to watch in between different presentations. And then we'll engage with staff over the rest of this month and bring staff in to where they can really contribute. Each department can say, you know, here's where we're hitting a home run over here in Public Works. Here's what our fire department's done that really needs acknowledgement. Here's where our police department's getting stronger. And so with that, I would like council to tell me, is there anything that you guys are seeing that you'd like to change or drive a different direction? Do you like the direction we're going? Or maybe I'm not explaining enough and you guys have questions of kind of what direction I'm trying to go. Let's start with Les.
No, I appreciate the update. And no, I don't think I have any questions or anything.
Okay.
I don't either. Good job.
Oh, thank you. We should probably stop now. So moving on to item 7E. So.
No, I think that's a great idea.
It's a good vision. I think it's good, Mayor.
Okay. Well, at the risk of looking a little less professional than what we could, we directed the creative team, county fair, blue ribbon, y'all come out, wear your boots and jeans or tennis shoes and shorts and listen to some music and enjoy it, and then you'll get our homework. We work for you, so we're gonna give you our homework. We're gonna turn it in and tell you here's what we've been doing, and then we'll tell you where we're going. So I appreciate council's vote of confidence on that. I'm gonna keep driving that forward, and y'all put it in your calendars, August 25th, and tell everybody we need a turnout. We definitely don't want to do this with just the staff looking at us. They know what they're doing. We need you guys to be there so that you know what we're doing. So August 25th, back here behind me, 6 p.m. And I promise you'll have a good time. Item 7E, we have Mr. Hartman coming up here for this much-anticipated update on North Heights.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I appreciate the opportunity to give you this presentation today. So it's going to be in two parts. I'm going to give you an overview of infrastructure, give you some idea of steps forward on water mains especially. But Assistant Director Utilities Shannon Tollison will be giving you the update on the lead and copper rule because that's pretty extensive change from where we were over the lead and copper rule since the late 80s. I'll give you the opportunity to ask me questions before she comes up on that, or we can answer questions at the end. But if you have questions in between, please let me know. Okay. So the overview starts way back when the city originally was chartered. A lot of the North Heights, and here's an example of Miller Heights, a 1902 plat. A lot of this was platted even prior to the city. So why is that important? Because back in 1902, all you had to do was get a surveyor and mark the boundaries, and you had a plat. I gave you an example of a 1955 plat down here at Bennett, Addition Unit 1, where in 1955 you had to have the same survey, but you also had to have the public improvements that went along with that subdivision. Why is that important? That's important because those communities that were developed prior to those state law requirements for public improvements had to be built piece at a time. Each lot owner was responsible for development of public improvements related to their lot when they developed that lot. Whereas in the 1955 and subsequent Southwest, all of this was built with the requirements for improvements because the state legislature recognized the requirements for those public improvements for a thriving neighborhood. And you had this challenge way back in the 1950s and the 1940s coming out of World War II. So I'll flip back and forth a little bit. So what you see there is that we have areas that were developed in and around the early part before the subdivision requirements were and after. But this represents the water map shows this a little better. The red lines here represent the 2-inch mains across the city. You can see how it relates to those old neighborhoods that were typically platted prior to those subdivision improvements. Because we had, starting in 1980, we had a minimum size of an 8-inch water main required, and then sanitary sewer had that same requirement from the 1972. Utilities was separated from public works in 1972.
But these areas that you see are typically reflecting in those older areas of a city that were platted probably prior to the 1950s and prior to those state requirements for public improvements. So there is opportunity throughout the city for this type of infrastructure installation. You'll see here that we have the North Heights shaded in geographical behind those so that you can see where the 2-inch are in related to that. But you can see it just southeast of downtown. You can see it right southwest of downtown. Why doesn't this exist east of Palo Duro High School? Is because for a decade in the late 90s, early 2000s, those mains were replaced. So there's been a systematic approach for 2-inch main replacement, even including since I've been here. When I first arrived 20 years ago, there was about 120 miles of 2-inch, and currently we've crossed under the 80-mile mark left. So there's been a lot of improvement related to water mains. I'm going to go back to the sewer. It's not as prevalent. Oh, one thing I wanted to point out, over at 34th and Eastern, there's a subdivision over there that's platted much like what we're going to talk about in the west part of the North Heights and the University Heights, where those improvements weren't put in. So this goes beyond the boundaries of the North Heights, but it is prevalent in the North Heights, how that subdivision was created. So back to the sewer master map. What I want you to understand here and talk a little bit about is that same process. So on the southwest side, those subdivision improvements are put in with the units. From the 1950s, all of those subdivisions were put in with those improvements related to sanitary sewer for each and every one of those lots. So if you buy a lot that was platted with those subdivision requirements, it has all those amenities. Those required public improvements that go with it. If you buy a lot that was platted prior to that, it's buyer beware. Basically, it's up to that owner. So our current process is that each of those processes is defined by the Development Policy Manual. So that is what we created coming out of the 1972 division, is a manual that defines how and what's required for those improvements. Obviously, those subdivisions, especially the North Heights, and it's prevalent in the North Heights, did not have the same infrastructure improvements put in. So, but on the sewer map, that line that crosses on your upper right, that's the northeast interceptor. And that is a huge component of the next step identified in previous master plans for the loading of sewer going from the city. You see all those blue lines, they all collect into that the outflow lines that are running right through the North Heights. Okay, we've talked about this before. I've talked about this at community meetings and with the neighborhoods, that the loading of that is one of the primary reasons for the odor and the hydrogen sulfide gas. So the Northeast Interceptor is the first piece of the puzzle that allows us to shift load off of that to make it function. One of your commenters said you need a pipe that carries it with it out away from the city. Well, a proper operating sanitary sewer has that space on the top and carries that with it to the plant where we can deal with it. Okay, so that's just a history of it.
Hey, Floyd, can I ask you a quick question while we're here? So what you're saying is that line to the Northeast Interceptor, that's a 2-inch line?
The Northeast Interceptor is that big, large...
right, that's sewer, right.
That's sewer. This is map. This is water.
Right.
Okay, it's a little confusing because of the same
color.
color.
Switching from red and blue, I just want to clarify.
Yeah. So the maps are a little confusing, but on the sewer...
Red on the sewer...
It's just Hollywood Road drainage.
Yeah, but it doesn't mean it's 2.
It doesn't mean size on this map. It doesn't mean size on this map. Okay. It means size on this map. Okay. Here's a shot of that same water main map. So now we've zoomed into the North Heights to see where those 2 inches exist in the North Heights. You can see that the boundary on the north and the west is the 20-inch. And then you have 8s and 6s crossing where the fire hydrants are connected. And all of those fire hydrants, we've checked those. We'll get into that in just a minute. But these 2-inch lines are not do not meet our current standards. Obviously, they were put in with that development. But back to what I was saying, see the blank areas where there is no service? It goes back to this manual of how that's done. And what we did, what the city's done is incentivize the first 100 feet of water and or sewer for those blank areas, okay? That exists on the sewer as well. See, it's almost identical where the sewer doesn't serve and the water doesn't serve in the neighborhood. So when you talk about infrastructure in the North Heights and other older subdivisions, there's two general high-level concepts that you need to think about. We're talking about the replacement program. That's replacing existing lines. And then the extension for development and growth is a different topic, okay? So just remember as we discuss through that those are two at core different, and they're defined differently in this. In this manual, we pay for the first 100 feet for any individual lot that's going to develop. Well, Emily, and under Andrew's direction, excuse me, that team developed the neighborhood plans, and you saw the benefits earlier in a presentation of the neighborhood plans. There's another benefit of the neighborhood plans is that we have identified the neighborhood plans to double that in incentive for these neighborhood plans. So the North Heights, San Jacinto, and those other approved neighborhood plans actually have a 200 feet participation agreement from the city for incentives to develop a lot. Now, if you're 1,500 feet away, that doesn't help you much. And so this is how we got to. Each of these was piecemeal. The 20-inch obviously was put in probably in about 1976 in that time frame to address fire flows at the time and have a master flow. And so those hydrants flow typically around 500 gallons a minute to 1,000 gallons a minute, whereas in the southwest part of town, you probably get up to 1,300 gallon a minute fire flow because of that. In working with the fire department, we've identified that they have not had an issue with water supply at a fire that we're aware of, and we continue to work with them on that. So again, I'm going to go back and forth, try not to take too much time. Almost the same discussion, but you can see the outflow lines running right through the middle. Those angled lines, that's the big outflow lines where we are seeing the need to address and installed the odor control unit, which controls hydrogen sulfide. And it's placed right up there at northwest 24th. And in that unit, we were testing inside the manholes a high level. Outside of it, ambient air, we were testing at very low levels. But yet that still is the odor, and so we put that in. We're seeing high success rates in that we're measuring zero coming out of the top of that unit. Staff continues to work and look and monitor, and the commitment was if we need to put more odor control units, which control hydrogen sulfide plus some others, that we would look at that, and staff is still continuing. They continue to look for other improvements in the system, such as manhole repairs or anything where hydrogen sulfide could leave those. So there's a lot of work being done on that. What we don't find in the ambient air is anything that meets or exceeds hazardous levels identified, not only through OSHA, but also you can get a lot of information from the EPA on levels of exposure, and we're well below those limits. And typically in the ambient air, we measure very little, if no, hydrogen sulfide. Now, when we do measure anything that elevates, that's where we're looking at these measures to take to impact that. Back up a step, for decades we have injected a ferrous product, an iron product that has high oxygen levels in lift stations to suppress the creation of hydrogen sulfide as it moves to the plant. So there's a lot going on. Northeast Interceptor is going to give us the relief that makes this thing operate functionally. We've installed that. We continue to monitor and we continue to test, and we'll address it as we find issues going forward. And so that's basically on the hydrogen sulfide.
Quick question,
yes.
if I may. So the odor problem is due to what?
Well, hydrogen sulfide is the primary thing.
That's what the sewer waste is giving that off.
Generating.
And we're not able to contain it.
Not at all times, but with this new unit, we're proving that we can contain it with that unit. And the treatment processes that we had in over the decades, it has exceeded the capacity of that. So,
But they, even though we don't think they're dangerous levels, the neighborhood still smells these
yes,
odors.
you still smell it, but we haven't measured any dangerous levels that we're aware of. Now, we will continue to work with the community to identify what it is, and we'll work with the federal and state regulators as they look at this issue as well. So,
Do we have any other areas of town that have similar issues?
oh, yes. Hydrogen sulfide is generated at multiple lift stations around town. We monitor that. We treat, my memory is, at 6 different places with the ferrous to limit the hydrogen sulfide. But you can go to other communities. Almost every community you go to, there's a spot, what is known as the sewer plant, or this area where this kind of odor exists. I worked in Canyon for 10 years, and the Southeast Park was the sewer plant, and it had the same issues. So every community deals with this, and this is not something that's only limited to Amarillo or this area. This is how sewer systems work that are operated the way we operate. Okay?
So this, what you're saying is this hydrogen sulfide gas, it's not due to poor infrastructure?
Oh, poor infrastructure impacts it? Yes. Now, thank you for that clarification. Poor infrastructure, such as deteriorated manholes, those types of things allow it out. Now, what we have to do is deal with it as the system generates it. So as we can pull the load off, put to the northeast interceptor, that will generate less hydrogen sulfide. So our treatment processes probably will bring that under control.
So are we doing that now that the Northeast Interceptor is online?
The Northeast Interceptor will not be online until a year from today.
Okay, so
remember,
as that comes online,
it's going to be the biggest factor of positive impact that we can have on hydrogen sulfide. I can get you a map that shows you the lift stations and the ability to, have the ability to take loads off of what goes through the North Heights and put it over on the Northeast Interceptor and get into more typical engineering standards of a pipeline. One thing you got to remember, those pipelines that go through the North Heights, the first one was installed in 1927. The engineering standards weren't as strict as they are today in operation of a wastewater, so they're flatter than we would put them in today.
So are we looking at those ones in 1927, and what I hear from the citizens is those aren't any good? Like, I mean, do we test them? Do we look at them? I mean,
we have actually relined those in the past, and we put we've had manhole projects where we've sealed manholes. We actually had high inflow and infiltration challenges at the River Road plant in the past, as we experienced with Hollywood Road, and the manholes through Thompson Park and up into this neighborhood were sealed. Now, we have to go monitor that and check that to make sure they are. But when you seal it, you are also creating more gases. So you have to have ways to offset that. And our staff has done that.
So these lines, I mean, is there a plan to replace these? Is there a need to replace these old lines?
The manhole project and then the odor control project is the best thing to do there right now, identified in our 2013 wastewater master study. What we need to do is update that study on this issue in this area, and so that an external engineer or another set of eyes can look at it and help us evaluate that. So one of the things that we probably need to do is have a focused study on this from an external engineer that gets a comprehensive view of our system and how that works.
Okay, so minus the gas, I'm just saying functionality.
Yeah.
We're talking about infrastructure here, so
yeah.
Let's minus the gas. Do these lines need to be replaced?
Well, no. Actually, some of them, no. We relined those in the late 90s to the early 2000s, and they're still functional as long as we can not overload them. So most of those are functional. So the Northwest Interceptor, let me answer that. The Northwest Interceptor, we can take from over there at West Hills, we can take about 5 lift stations and move to the Northwest Interceptor. We just have to have the solution at the other end of that. So each piece of the puzzle is going to allow us to do that. So most of these are clay lines. They'll be evaluated, but most of them are functional the way they are and still have a useful life left because they've been rehabbed or maintained.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
It does.
Okay.
Hey, can you go back a couple that had
Yes.
that showed where the Hollywood Road and River Road
basins.
So the blue is going to River Road, correct?
Yes, and the red goes to Hollywood Road.
And what happens, so the problem is when all this sewage comes from this area, there's so much of it that overloads the system that produces this gas.
Well, gas is created with time in the system. So the sewage starts deteriorating once it gets into the pipeline. And the time it takes to get through the system, it generates more gas as that deterioration. It's a product of the degrading of the biological product within the sewer. So that time in that sewer generates more gas. So you take a lift station where we have a lift station and it has a wet well, we bring that in and it sits there for a while, and that gives it time to generate gases. Okay, so time and that ability generates the gas. There's 50 plus lift stations, probably 55 if my memory is correct, lift stations in this system. So each one of those generates hydrogen sulfide. That also goes in, but the gravity outflow, the main outflow lines, are what receives that and takes it to the plant.
And then what happens with this map when the Northwest Interceptor comes on?
Well, we'll have more load. We'll have a third basin to start showing you where sewage goes through that line, not this one, okay? We'll be able to show you where and what improvements we were able to make. What lift station could we change and move and make that loading work and make that system work better. Right now, without the Northeast Interceptor, any addition east of that line would add flow to that line, which makes the problem worse. So that is one of the reasons the Northeast Interceptor was such a critical component. It helps the entire city. It allows us to grow all across the city because it takes that load and allows it to go through another spot.
Can you go to the next, I think it's the next one, no, one more. So this map we're looking at is the North Heights infrastructure.
Water mains. This is water mains.
These are water mains. So I see the ones highlighted in yellow.
Yes.
What does that mean?
Those are the ones we have replaced in the last 10 years. So that's actually lines that have been replaced in the last 10 years.
Okay. And so so these were lines, and then just, I mean, what was it, just the age of the lines at that point, or what caused us to do those replacements?
Different challenges. You see the right in the middle, the group. That was the project that was done in 2018. That Mayor, you've talked to a resident about a project of water main replacement. That's the one that was started in 2018, finished. The other ones, the two on Northwest 17th and up there at the top on the left, those were city crew installed because we needed that. There was some issue that drove that to be a priority, probably a number of main breaks. The others were identified as challenges related to individual services and or even fire hydrant flows. But those improvements were all made for some reason related to specific issues. But what I wanted to highlight there was there are and have been some water mains replaced. Now, we need to do more. Don't kid yourself. There needs to be more. But just right east of it, outside of the North Heights, you can see the red lines. Right southwest of it, that applies to many neighborhoods that we need to do more. And those lines need to be upgraded and replaced.
Hey, Floyd?
Yes.
Can you go back one slide?
I can.
So at what point do we say, and what's the plan to replace these 2-inch mains?
Well, we have in the master plan studied what resources it takes to do it. It's a matter of funding and applying that funding to this problem. Okay. Now, recently we've had the wastewater plant that had to be a priority, and we had to put funding to that. But these 2 inches need to be a priority. The lead and copper rule is going to make them a priority. So that was why this is related to the lead and copper rule. As you look at that, and when you understand what Shannon presents to you, that this is going to create a 10-year window for us to look at these and identify funding and bring it forward for a replacement.
But prior to that, have we ever had any sort of, asset management plan or anything in that nature?
Well, it hasn't been a cohesive one, and it's always been subject to other challenges related to what or priorities that those previous councils had or previous management had. But yes, what we need to do is do a commitment to replacing all the 2-inch for all of those residents and have that in a plan. But again, back to the lead and copper rule, this is the trigger that's going to put us in that place, because the lead and copper rule, and she'll cover it, is going to require us over a 10-year window to replace all the service lines on those. Well, why would we go replace the service lines and not the main? It's going to be duplicate cost if we don't. So those 2 inches will be main replacements in that plan.
Yeah, and then go forward one slide, and then I'll be done. So back to you said empowerment zone up to 200 feet?
Back to the neighborhood plan is a supplement to this to provide 200 feet incentive of water and sewer each.
So on that incentive, is it only allowed to go on these blue 20-inch or these 12-inch mains?
It would be for that incentive is for the undeveloped. It would be extending to where there is no service, where there is no line. Okay, does that help?
Yeah. So would y'all be extending on 2-inch mains as well?
Oh, we would not extend to 2-inch. Our current standard is an 8-inch minimum.
Okay, good. No,
but that's been since 1972. Our current standard is, I think it was 6-inch then, but our current standard now is 8-inch. So we don't put in 2-inch mains in this manner anymore. We don't put 3s and 4s for the same reason. And by the way, one of the benefits of that minimum standard is fire flows are acceptable.
And so the red are all 2 inches. So how old are they?
Most of those I looked at were put in probably in the 1930s. So some of them could be a little bit earlier, some of them in the 40s and 50s. But after you got to the 1950s, we had the subdivision rules. So they're probably pre-1950s, but most of those are 1930s.
And then the blue would be?
A patchwork of the same thing. The 6s and 8s are some of those will be in the 30s and 40s. The 20-inch, again, I looked at it on a set of plans. It was 1976. So there probably was severe fire flows prior to the 1976 project.
And what about, was mentioned earlier about the water pressure issue? I don't know if you're going to get to that, but
yeah.
what is causing that? Or if you're going to get to it, then.
Yeah, it's in there. The only thing between that was this slide, which this is a street, the street maintenance. So just adding to the main replacement, the seal coat projects were done over the last few years, 2016 and 2019 in the North Heights. And I know you can't read that, but it has the miles of operational point repairs also. But that was about $1.2 million worth of water, about $1.3 million worth of water mains over the 10-year window, and over the 5-year window, same time, the seal coat, that's about $1.2 million. So about $2.5 million worth of improvements on infrastructure in the North Heights. At the same time, that seal coat project went across the city, as you can see. But pressure complaints are frequent. You can see on here that we had 22, the bottom line, we had 22 low pressure checks in the last 2 years. Now, all of those landed within the engineering and the state standards. Minimum pressure of 35 psi for an operation of a water system, and 20 psi under fire flow conditions. And those all passed that test. We will be glad to check any pressure complaint or quality water complaint anytime anybody has it. So we'll be just call our water department, call us, and we'll go check those. But what we do if there are severe concerns, this is pictures of a flush. You pull the meter, you put on a straight pipe, you open that up to make sure that that main isn't blocked, valves aren't off, and that system works. That's what extent we will go to check to make sure that that house has water to the meter. So we haven't found any that didn't meet the standard at this point. Does that mean the 2-inch mains don't need to be upsized? I'm not saying that. The 2-inch does need to be upsized. But what we found is that at our main, coming to our meter, we have sufficient water on all of those that we're called on. But that doesn't mean we won't come check, and we'll be glad to come check any customer. But I wanted to have a picture of the flush so you understood what a flush was. Okay?
Hey, Floyd, back to, I mean, you don't have to go back, but where we had the red and the blue and, yeah, that one.
Yes.
So I'm reading on this legend here that the blue is actually a 2.5-inch line?
There are some. The blues are anything above. Blues are anything above a 2-inch.
Oh.
So there are some that are 2.5. There are some that are 3s, 4s, but most of those are 6 and 8s. Especially the north and south ones feed those fire hydrants. And if you look at the fire hydrant map, they're on that.
Okay.
Blue is anything above a 2-inch on this map. Okay.
Thank you.
One of them, you're probably finding one that is a 2.5. Okay. I've always joked, if we could get a 5-inch, we'd have everything. Okay.
So Floyd, I think what this council is probably going to try to move us toward, Councilman Kraft said asset management plan. I think what we're looking for is.
Where's Will? Where's Will?
Yeah, he's back there.
Come here, Will. Will is interim assistant director. Will, I just wanted you to tell him what your original job is and what it's about.
Yes. Hello, Council. I was hired in January to do asset management for the city, so we're about halfway into our kickoff halfway into our project of upgrading our system of tracking work, understanding the condition of assets, and that will all be launched by February of next year.
Okay. So if we wanted a North Heights, University Heights identification so that we can budget appropriately, do you have that current data of these are the oldest lines, these are the ones that would be the, I'd say the biggest priority to go ahead and replace? Where would you be in that process?
So right now we're actually in the process of looking at all of the lines across the city. But yes, we do know where all the 2-inch lines are. We know roughly when they were installed, and we're working on prioritization, and that's part of asset management. We not only have the lines, we have the plants and all that stuff. So we want to be able to have a succinct list of all of the things that we have to do so you guys can make the best decision on where we deploy those dollars.
Right, and so you're going to be able to give us data that shows oldest to newest, biggest need to lowest need, and that's going to be scattered across the entire city?
Yeah, oldest to newest, but also one of the things we're adding is conditions. We have some lines that are old and are still in great conditions. We have other lines that are not as old and are in terrible condition. So not only do we know the age, but we also have, real world observations to help with that assessment.
Okay.
So, Mayor, let me add right there. But we are going to go ahead and isolate a plan for the 10-year window for the North Heights.
Okay.
Based off of this, because that's going to match the lead and copper requirements that you're going to hear in just a minute. So not only will he be able to do it, citywide, we can also isolate into the neighborhood and help identify that challenge.
Okay.
We probably will have people from the other neighborhoods wanting the same similar type thing. Where it applies to the lead and copper rule, it will probably have a 10-year window. So we can talk about funding and budget. But I think we also need to talk about how that 10-year is going to be funded over that window. And it's going to take a significant funding. But I think we also have committed that we're going ahead with a design of a next phase right now based off of available E&I. And then hopefully in the budget, I think this council's direction is going to be to put some funding into a main replacement to start construction next year in the North Heights. That's what I would anticipate.
Yeah, I would think that the engineering and the design work would be something we definitely want to implement sooner.
Okay.
And then I think we would be interested in budgeting. So, if we put $1 million out, what we're going to want to know is, how many linear feet does that take care of? And then what's the install time on something like that?
And we'll be able to work with Kyle and his group to get that to you.
Okay. So we'd be looking for that budget time-ish. For us to be able to make a move on
for
that.
What will that $1 million do, and then what is the plan, and how much funding do we need for the 10-year window? Okay?
Yeah.
With that, I'll turn it over to
I think we got
Shannon.
one more question for you.
So I'm just recalling, did the PDP kind of delve into this?
PDP did a little bit, but they delved more into roads.
Okay.
But they did delve into how do we fund long-term infrastructure. Including water and sewer.
But I thought they had some statistics and information about, maybe we're going to get more detail out of this, but kind of where we are, because as I recall, the statistic was like, maybe you know this off the top of your head, the majority of our water and sewer lines are between 60 and 90 years old.
Yes, there is that statistic in PDP. I can go get it for you.
But it's a large percent. I mean, this isn't, and it's not something that's unique to Amarillo. Right. Cities all across the country have just not, replaced the infrastructure.
Yes, all the problems we talked about are common in communities across this nation. This is not something that's isolated to Amarillo. Now, that doesn't mean we don't address the problem or need to put more assets to the problem here. Okay?
Well, I think it's a two-part thing. Number one is, which is the easier of the two, is assessing where we are and what needs to be done. The more challenging of this, I think when we get the price tag on this, we're going to have to get pretty creative in figuring out how to do that, or the community is going to have to get an understanding of what type of investment we're looking at, because it's if you look at other cities in major downtown areas, they have their water mains break, businesses are closed down for days, all these types of things. But when you're looking at a majority of ours being between 60 and 90 years old, we got to figure out the plan and the order, but more importantly, what is going to be our strategy to replace it?
But I hope you see, with Will's position being created, that we're working on this issue for you, and we're here to bring you solutions. Okay.
Good afternoon, Council, Mayor, and citizens of Amarillo. So I am Shannon Tollison. I'm the Assistant Director of Utilities. I am also the person primarily responsible for managing the implementation of the EPA's lead and copper rule improvements. So I'm not going to teach you anything you don't already know. It is well known that exposure to things like lead, there is no safe level of exposure to lead. So with adults, there's definitely increase in opportunities for diseases such as kidney function diseases, blood pressure issues, heart disease, and also increased instances of cancer. For children exposed to lead, obviously some of the primary concerns, at least from pediatric levels, is that there are developmental deficits whenever excess exposure to lead lines is involved. So really a big point of EPA, and a number of people have already addressed this from the community already, Flint, Michigan kind of began a turning point overall to the EPA refocusing efforts on things like lead lines. Now, going a little bit into the history, the Texas state lead ban actually went into effect in July of 1988. So all building codes after January 1st, 1989 reduced or eliminated the ability to utilize lead to do something like a service line from your water mains to the homes. So essentially anything constructed after January 1st, 1989 is immediately designated as a non-lead line. Immediately following the rule associated with lead bans across different states, the EPA began getting involvement in how do we handle exposure to items such as lead and copper that can have detrimental effects to health. And in 1991, they established the actual first lead and copper rule for the United States. So through that process, they identified specific techniques. Those specific techniques had to do with corrosion control treatment. That was one of the initial plans associated with how do we reduce exposure issues associated with lead and copper lines. Source water treatment, are there source water constituents? Is the chemistry of source water potentially a cause for additional exposure to lead and copper sources? Providing actual sampling and actually stating what that sampling level looks like. And then establishing some requirements regarding identify what upper level limits are, reasonable exposure at that point in time, which again is no longer the case. There is no reasonable exposure. And then public education requirements. So as a result, with Flint, Michigan, and with the Flint, Michigan water crisis, subsequently the EPA began to refocus their efforts on identifying issues associated with legacy lines that still exist in systems. So they implemented what is called the lead and copper rule improvements, also known as the LCRI. So the EPA originally submitted what was called an LCRR, Lead and Copper Rule Revision, in January of in 2021. However, the rule never became formally effective before they made modifications to that rule, which began in November of 2023, which established what is now called the Lead and Copper Rule Improvements. Some of the key provisions associated with this is that you must identify 100% of the legacy lines in your system. Now, I'm going to take a step aside here really quick and say, if you talk to any consultant or any other community who is dealing with the lead and copper rule right now, there's actually not a large percentage of lead in systems, especially in distribution systems associated with the service connection from your water main to your home. The issue is we have a lot of either unknown pipe types, we have a lot of galvanized pipe types. The problem is galvanized pipes that are downstream of a lead pipe have the ability to capture lead, and then if your water chemistry changes, it subsequently can start releasing that lead that has historically been attached to the galvanized pipe. A lot of the consultants have actually indicated the rule should be called the galvanized requiring replacement rule and not so much the lead and copper rule. So the galvanized is actually what's going to prompt a lot more of the changes than anything actually lead and copper derived in the system. Some additional requirements, improved tap sampling. They lowered the lead action levels to where, again, there's no safe limitation. If you have lead detection in your system through your sampling processes, you must create a plan to eliminate that potential location. So I really want to talk a little bit about the timelines associated with this. So some of the key dates that the EPA originally had indicated, and again, I need to state that the EPA lead and copper rule improvement is actually not fully promulgated at this point in time. It is expected to go into full course in October of this year, but one of the dates will not change. Every community water system in the United States of America has something called a service line inventory that is due October 16th of this year, every single one of them. And that service line inventory must indicate your lines, your service lines from your water main to your homes are one of 4 categorized types. Those only allowable categorized types are lead, non-lead, galvanized requiring replacement, and unknown. That's the only 4 allowable limits. So it is expected and accepted that on October 16th of 2024, when we submit a report to the state, that there are going to be lines that are considered unknown lines. That then starts the next step of this process, the phase 2 of this process. The phase 2 of this process is, okay, you now have a known value. You have a number of meters in your system. You have a number of service lines in your system. You now have to identify without any justification. You cannot have any unknown lines by the end of this. You have to know what your lines are made of to start that replacement plan as the next step. So from October of 2024 to 2027 is that timeline for which you must physically identify all of your unknown lines and subsequently have a plan in place for what that replacement for 100% of the service lines that are either galvanized requiring replacement or lead lines. You have to have that by 2027. Oh, I apologize. And lastly, then from that point, from 2027, you have 10 years to replace 100% of those service lines over the course of that 10 years. There's also rules associated with at what rate those have to be replaced, and I'll get to that in just a second. So originally, the lead and copper rule improvement really only dealt with the service line from the water main to the meter, so on what is called the utility side of the service line. The lead and copper rule improvement actually added from the customer's meter to their house, but not inside of the house. We do not review or evaluate any of the internal constituents of the plumbing, but it also added the connectors. So that initial connector, sometimes called a gooseneck, originally in the LCRR was not considered as it was a smaller portion. The LCRI is actually indicating we have to characterize the entire service line from the water main all the way to the house. So going back to a point that Floyd made, If you have a community where you have a significant number of meters in that area that have existed for in excess of the time that the lead and copper ban became effective, there's a good chance you're going to have to replace that entire service line. And at which point, if you're doing an entire service line, would it not make sense to replace your water main, especially if they're in those locations where you have water mains that are 60 to 80 years old? So I think that's where we kind of start planning for that response. Service line inventory under the LCRI. So again, I already stated we have to include the connector materials. We must include street addresses in each service line and connector. So each and every service line and connector associated with a location of an address or a meter we have to identify. That service line inventory from the date we submitted in October of this year has to be updated annually every year moving forward until that time in which we know 100% of what our service lines are comprised of. The last couple of bullets, because the LCRI is not formally approved by the EPA, these could change, but right now the EPA is suggesting that customer inquiries of incorrect characterizations. So say I have a consultant go out and they look at a service line and they say, this service line is a galvanized requiring replacement, and the customer comes back and says, no, actually I had the full system replaced with PEX back in 2017, you have to, within 60 days, go back out and reevaluate that. That's a current rule according to the EPA. And then lastly, you must validate the accuracy of the characterized non-lead connections within 7 years. So even when we say something was built after 1989, it does not negate the fact you must know 100% of your system of what it's comprised of for service lines. And again, that last date, so when I originally said we have 2024, October of 2024 is when your initial service line inventory must be completed. On 2027, on January 1st, 2027, you can have no unknown or uncharacterized lines. Some of the other additional requirements, in terms of monitoring, there's always been kind of a unique statistical evaluation of lead levels in samples, and that's been called the P90 levels. We are completely taking away the P90 levels. Any detection of lead or copper that exceeds the allowable limitations immediately becomes subject to some type of investigation or replacement plan. That's just the rule associated with the EPA. So the next step, and one of the most important things, is that once you have a plan in place, so January of 2027, we have to have a plan in place that says we are going to replace all service lines that fall under the category of lead or galvanized requiring replacement within 10 years from that date. You must replace them at a minimum of 10% per year. So that's going to be a large-scale replacement plan. I think I redid another slide. I apologize. So lastly, what are we doing currently? This is kind of the meat and potatoes. What are we doing currently? Where are we? So in May of 2023, I assumed the position of Assistant Director of Utilities. By November, we had a consultant evaluating our current historical records review. So there's a couple phases to just the service line inventory part of that, and the first phase is what's called historic records review. Because there is cost associated with doing a physical line verification, what they try to give us the opportunity to do first is look at things like our water main replacements, service line replacements that we've done historically, and utilize those records to reduce that number of physical lines we're going to have to inspect. Once we get to that point, and again, I'll talk a little bit about the phase 2, the investigations, but we immediately have to submit that service line inventory to TCEQ and immediately begin the process of identifying what our replacement plan looks like. We also, a requirement of this plan is develop that public outreach communication component. The EPA goes so far as to say you actually must contact each individual with an unknown lead or galvanized requiring replacement in 2 different methods of communication at least 4 times. So you have to put out a ton of public communication to identify and get everybody up to date on where we're at. So again, I stated we are currently performing the historic records review, that first part of it. What we have completed to date is that all physical metered locations have been identified with GPS coordinates so that our consultant could develop a map to start the process. We've also supplied them with all of the main replacement projects that we have in terms of our history so that they can start looking through those records to see which ones actually identify service lines that have been replaced. Because again, what the EPA is looking at in this is the service lines, not necessarily the mains. So we've developed that process and we've already submitted all of that data over to the consultant. We are looking for an update, I think probably next month. The consultant is more than willing to come give you guys a presentation should you want additional information about what they're doing. So, I mean, I absolutely schedule that if you would like that. So lastly, we get into the actual, so what happens when we find these locations? The field investigation part of this is a requirement associated with the lead and copper. Now, it's not that you have to do the investigation prior to doing the work. If you have a location that you're already planning main replacements or service line replacements, there's nothing in the EPA rule that says you can't continue moving forward with that effort. So there's nothing saying like we have to postpone any project planning to move forward with this. It just has to be identified and updated in that annual service line inventory that we're going to have to submit every single year from this point moving on until we have no lead or galvanized in the system. Galvanized requiring replacement, apologies. So upon first evaluation, what we did is we identified the estimate meter location that existed before January 1st, 1989 when that lead ban took effect. At that point in time, we have roughly 54,500 meters that are going to have some sort of inspection done on them. So that is done either through inspection within the meter box, if the meter box allows that, and you can actually see both the customer side and the city side of it, or we perform something called potholing to expose the lines and identify each of those locations. The consultant has indicated that roughly out of all of the inspections they perform, the physical line inspections, their replacement plans have been roughly 20%. So across all different communities that they've been working with. So if we look at roughly 20% of 54,000 lines, we're probably looking at 11,000 that will have to have a full replacement. So what does that look like in terms of cost? So next year, we already have, this will go through the budgeting process. CIP requesting for next year will be looking at $5.3 million to do the physical line inspection. This currently does not include any actual replacements. This is completing the physical inspection so that we can update that inventory that we're submitting to the state that says, here's what this could possibly cost us in terms of overall cost. They're basing this off of the process of doing potholing at a rough estimate is $100 per location. So that's where the roughly $5.2 million is coming from. From that point, you start the next project effort, which is the planning. So once you know areas of specific need, you can start planning for those actual replacements. If you know the replacements are going to have to take place because they fall in one of those categories that the EPA is requiring you replace it, you start that process. Now, if we look at, again, roughly 11,000 sites, 10,750 roughly assuming, the average cost that plumbing system or plumbers have told us associated with a full service line replacement from your water main to the house itself is on average $5,000 per site, assuming roughly 10,000 sites that don't have concrete work that would have to be involved. Once you do include that concrete work, which roughly 750 to 1,000 may require that, you're looking upwards of $10,000 per those sites. So again, when we're looking at roughly 10% lines, so 1,100 lines having to be replaced on an annual basis, for the next 2 to 5 years of the CIP planning, we're looking at $11 million a year. So that's kind of the initial start to this overall process. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Is there federal funding for this?
That's a great question. There is federal funding, and the federal funding right now, I believe the bipartisan infrastructure bill has $50 billion, but that is for every community water system in the United States of America.
First come, first serve?
Mostly low income or disadvantaged communities.
So the city is responsible from the meter to the home, just not entering the home, from what
So-
that diagram said, correct?
The EPA does not require that the city pays for the entire replacement. The EPA requires that we, as a municipality, need to help the citizen to have that complete line replacement done. However, you can say from the meter to the house, we will replace on your behalf if you can't replace it yourself, and at some point in time, you set up a payment plan to pay that back to the city for doing that work on your behalf.
Okay. So we really don't have any idea how many of our lines.
The
fall into
rough
this at
guess
all.
estimate right now is probably going to be 11,000.
Okay, just based on their numbers.
Yeah, but as of October, or I apologize, January 1st of 2027, we have to know the full number.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem.
You know, to use a mayor's analogy, I feel like I took my car in for the alternator and you just told me it was the engine. I mean, this is like pretty.
Apologies for that.
Yeah, thank you. But I know you're just the bearer, not the. So, do we have does staff do all these? Or you're hiring a third party to do the inspections, or who's going to do the inspections?
That's a great question. We have been evaluating what staff availability we have against what backlog of work we have regarding the utility, and there's definitely going to be a need that we bring in consultants and contractors to assist in this to meet the deadlines associated by the EPA.
But every city and municipality in the country will be needing that same service at the
Every
same time.
system and municipality will need that same service. Every system and municipality will be sharing the same resources. So another part of the EPA lead and copper rule is after that 3-year period of window, you are responsible as the municipality for providing pitcher filters with an allotted number of pitcher, like the actual lead reducing pitchers for the duration of time for which those service lines have not been replaced. That's millions of filters that we would have to provide, and that is part of the EPA rule. Now, some of that could be removed from the rule whenever the rule is promulgated in October. But as the current written LCRI exists, the municipality is responsible for providing adequate services to remove lead from a system until that time the full service line has been replaced.
And have they determined what the penalties are if you don't meet these deadlines?
No.
I just can't imagine. I think it's going to be impossible to, maybe even in a 10-year period, to do all this. I mean, but anyway.
I know.
This may be a question for Floyd or Laura, but is there any idea as far as, you're talking $11 million in CIP on your water revenue, what type of water rate increase would have to happen, a water fee have to increase for that to happen?
I think
Just to have 11 million.
I think I'll address that. So our funding plan, remember, we're working on a Hollywood Road plant. So we're obviously back to Councilmember Tipp's point, is our federal funding. That's why we're so adamant on looking for every opportunity to fund that or any other piece of our capital projects that can fund. So we're looking at all options to fund anything. Now remember, you've heard me say that our goal is $15 million a year in cash funding. So this component of it, we still have all the other capital that we'll have to have. We'll utilize every tool we have prior to rate increases. So one of the things that will be at our disposal in this time period is the completion of the debt payments for the Potter County well field. That was issued in 2009. That's $86 million that was debt that was issued. So that pays off in 2029. So where this says $11 million a year, we may be able to take some of those, reissue debt, and use that in whether that's at the wastewater plant or this or cash, or finally a rate increase. So that plan with this added will be developed over this budget and into next budget. Right now we have the plan with the wastewater plant, and now we have to add this lead and copper cost into that funding plan. But don't forget that we do have some ability within existing rates to reissue debt. There was the $86 million for Potter County Wellfield. A couple of years prior to that, there was 15 or so million issued for a high service pump station. So some of those debt issuances, we can look at reissuing debt to cover some of this. But we'll have a good firm plan. But the primary component of that funding plan will be look at every opportunity for funding, not only competing for lead and copper rule, but other funding opportunities through grants and federal government and the state. Also, the Texas Water Development Board, been very successful using their programs, and they're part of this too. Does that answer your question?
Absolutely, thank you.
So we're working on a plan, including all revenue sources available. Okay.
So we appreciate the update, and, there are some things here I think that are practical. I think there are some other things here that probably are not very realistic in the way in which this would affect all of your service mains, and so you'd be hundreds of millions of dollars in order to get a test that would pass at the house, because if you can't get the service, assuming we had a lead issue. And then I think you've got, the Supreme Court ruling and some of the legislation and
throughout the
elections.
Throughout the history of the lead and copper rule, there's always been issues on the private side. Is the public entity responsible for the private side? Yeah. And that's manifested in this lead and copper rule that you just saw Shannon update you on. So there are issues related to the public entity spending money on the private side. However, what Shannon did indicate, we found some programs where basically there is a mechanism to help those who can't replace their lines. So it's dependent on how we want to structure that. I do think there's opportunities for us to structure that.
Right. I think
we've got to wait and see till the final rule is completed before that actually applies.
So to go back to Councilman Simpson, a little bit more on like the private property rights argument and some of these things that you may be taking action on. What is the consequence if we don't? So I think it's highly likely that you're going to see years and years of this go on with no action. And
but I want to clarify from today's discussion, that's not going to stop us from having a 10-year replacement in the North Heights. The main replacement is a separate thing, but it correlates with lead and copper.
Well, I think that's the bite at the apple, and then every municipality is going to say, great, man, fund the mandate, and we'll try and implement it. And it'll probably be 3 times the cost of what what a normal value would be, because everything's around 3 times as much when you run it through a government. And so I think that when you compile all that, we're probably looking at a whole nother issue here. But for this council, we definitely want to push forward with replacing the mains. And getting ourselves caught up on our end with the budgets that we have. But then on the extracurricular, I think we're looking at federal funding.
Yes.
And then I don't know that this council is going to drive you to, hire another person, start doing all these tests, really implement all these, and pushing 2-year plans in advance, knowing that, your election's going to drive a lot of this in November, plus you have the Chevron overturn of that case at the Supreme Court. So there would be some study, I would think, that would need to be done prior to council needing to take any action on this. Do you agree?
Yeah, I think more information will be coming, and especially as October rolls around and we find out the facts on the rules and any potential ramifications. Okay?
Very good. Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Thank you, Shannon.
Floyd.
We'll move on to item 7F. We've got some short updates since it is 6:15. We have Councilman Sherlin on our CVB, and then after that, we have Councilman Simpson on animal management. You're up, sir.
I'm excited, too.
You look excited.
Y'all notice Cashin had to leave. Y'all put this off long enough that I have to do it.
Read fast.
So anyway, we do have some really good information that I want to share with you. First of all, the CVB board was presented with the 2022-23 audit. After review, everything was up to GAPP standards. No inconsistencies were found. Motion to approve and passed by the board. Amy Tarr gave an update on the NJCAA Division I football bid the CVB put in. Now, what I'm really excited to share is we won the football championship for the next 4 years. So that is a real big win for the city of Amarillo. The championship will be filmed by ESPNU, and the third Wednesday of December, the teams will be staying in Amarillo. One team hotel, 80 rooms per night, teams 3 or 4 nights. There's a following of about 2,000 people for the JUCO football. So this is going to be a big impact for the city of Amarillo. It's really going to be a big deal. And for us to win it for 4 straight years, we're going to put Amarillo on the map. Everybody's going to see it across the nation. It's really exciting. That's about the end of it.
And that's a good update. Good news all the way around. Appreciate that. We'll go over to you there, Councilman Simpson, on AMW.
Yeah, a couple of things just to update you on. I think some things we'd already heard of, but just to give you an update. One is the Animal Shelter Services organization is finishing up their evaluation for our operations and everything involved with animal welfare management, and reports expected on that in early August. The technology investment that we talked about making, the staff will have body cams scheduled beginning July 5th. So staff has got that ready to implement. And then there have been about 30 cameras installed throughout the whole Amarillo Welfare Management Complex, because we talked about those cameras and the benefit of those. Municipal Court has been holding an animal docket the third Wednesday of every month, going through those warrants. We've had people come in, plead guilty. We've had others that want trials and others that have not shown up that we'll have to go find. But we're taking that seriously and holding those accountable for whatever laws they violated and mistreatment of animals. A couple of positive things that have come out of there is I think we just have worked through our first Texas Tech students who have done their first rotation that are at advanced enough level to do things like surgery. So, we're just now seeing the first class get to almost graduation. And when they get that much more experience, they're able to do those surgeries. They performed about 117 surgeries. They are still under the supervision of veterinarians, but that's helping both us as well as there. They also are working through a Raider pup program to adopt the dogs that they have there at Tech that they use in the vet school, and to take a more proactive approach in that. Many other outreach efforts are going in the community. But we are still taking in a tremendous amount of animals. We're not seeing any, relief on that. We're still seeing that going on in the community. I'm hopeful that maybe some of the tips and suggestions that come out of the Animal Shelter Services evaluation will maybe provide us some guidance on that. But that's kind of a quick update on animal welfare management.
Real good. Council questions for Tom or Les?
No, appreciate you guys.
No, thank you.
Thank you. Any future agenda items you would like to request, Council?
No, sir.
No, sir. I would.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to hear about the ADA compatibility the city has. I've been receiving some emails from people that say Southeast Park isn't handicap accessible, and I would like to know if we are handicap accessible, where we're handicap accessible, where our deficiencies are, and what we need to do to fix it.
Real good. We'll work on getting that one on, probably not this next agenda, but maybe the one after. Any other requests on 7G? Okay, that takes us into our consent agenda. Do I have anything that needs to be pulled off from council for the consent agenda?
No.
And Mayor, just real quick point of order for
Yes,
y'all.
ma'am.
We had an update to the minutes, and so there is a printout of minutes corrected, and this was on the item for the resolution for, and of course I just went blank on it.
I think it was Estacado.
Estacado, yes.
Yeah, there was
just
a 4-1
reflecting the
vote.
correct 4-1 vote. I had originally showed it as 5-0. So when you approve consent agenda today, it's for those updated minutes.
Great. So minutes, an acknowledgement of the minutes that are amended now from what they were posted as. And then, good catch, council. Anything else on consent agenda? Okay, would ask for a motion.
I move to adopt the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Got a motion and a second on the consent agenda. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Consent agenda passes. We will move into our non-consent agenda, item 9A. We have Mr. Kendrick coming up here for a public hearing.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is a public hearing and first reading of Ordinance 8142. This is a rezoning of Lot 20, Block 3, Estancia Addition, Unit Number 1, and this is in the vicinity of RM 1061 and Estancia Drive. The applicant is OJD Engineering LLC for Estancia Development LLC, and they are requesting a change from Office District 1 to General Retail District. The Planning and Zoning Commission found that this request does conform with the city plans, place types for the tract, and also the complete neighborhood scenario. And the Planning and Zoning Commission felt that given the location of the tract along a TxDOT highway, that non-residential development would be appropriate in this area. And it's also the developer's intent that this would be become a core retail area that would service both Estancia and the West Cliff neighborhood across on the other side of the highway there. So that is some of the elements we were looking for in city plan as well. So the Planning and Zoning Commission found that it complies with all those elements. We did receive one call on this request from the public that was just a general inquiry. Once explained, it did not object to opposition, and the Planning and Zoning Commission did recommend approval of this item with a unanimous vote.
Thank you, Mr. Kendrick. Great presentation. Do I have any questions for Mr. Kendrick on item 9A?
No, sir.
Okay. At this time, we'll open a public hearing. Do I have anyone here who would like to speak for or against this item, 9A? Seeing no one, we will close the public hearing, and I would ask for a motion from council.
I move to adopt ordinance number 8141 as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second on item 9A with no further discussion. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Item passes. Item 9B, we have another public hearing. Mr. Kendrick, if you'll take us on this one.
9B is a public hearing and first reading of Ordinance 8142. This is consider an annexation of 168.77 acres of unplotted land into the city of Amarillo. This is in the vicinity of Hastings Avenue and Loop 335, and the applicant is Highland Park Independent School District. At the last meeting, you all authorized the city manager to execute the agreed service plan, and this is the consideration of the annexation and that service plan. If this item passes today and its second reading, that service plan becomes binding. And just a couple brief details about the annexation and what is proposed. The applicants own approximately 556 acres in this area. Everything but that 168 acres is already in the city limits, and they are proposing to this area to develop with a single-family subdivision, a school, and also some various retail and non-residential uses as well upon full build-out of the neighborhood. The property is considered served by water currently. It is not considered served by sewer. However, per the service plan, the applicant, the developers will be responsible for extending the sewer to the site themselves and also within the subdivision upon its development. And they would also extend water mains within the subdivision itself upon development as well. Some other points of interest over the course of the service plan. Regarding emergency services, has noted that this applicant's property is located in a portion of Amarillo that has been identified already as needing a future fire station to cover the growing industrial growth in this area that is being largely driven by the AEDC projects in that area. So this area falls within the kind of that same area that this area is identified. Fire response will be provided by existing stations in the area, but the fire department did note that as this development and others continue to increase in the area, that will be a growing need in that area. Regarding police services, upon full build out of this, which is roughly a decade or so period for a neighborhood of this size, there would eventually be the need for 3 additional officers to provide services in this area based on the projected population growth upon full build out. Regarding solid waste services, the applicant has agreed to pay $296 over the course of 4 years to offset their prorated cost of solid waste service for this area, both the cost of equipment and containers, things of that nature. So they'll provide that over a 4-year period in equal payments due upon the annual anniversary of the annexation. So they have agreed to that as well. And I just want to note, like with the last annexation, with this being located in Potter County, due to the Potter County voters passing a assistance district back in 2018, we will not collect sales tax from this area as they are already claiming the full sales tax allowed by state law. So just wanted to note that that is also the same case for this annexation as well. We did send public notices on this item as required and did not receive any comments. And with that, I'll answer any questions you all may have, and I'll also note that we have representatives from the applicant's side here as well, if you were to have questions for them as well.
Questions for Mr. Kendrick?
Yes, sir. From what you just stated, there's going to be substantial cost to the city at some point in time with a fire station, with 3 additional police officers. How fast do we see getting a return back on this? Do you know?
I couldn't put an exact number in terms of the years on that for you at this stage. I know, let me go back to this slide. So the good thing about this annexation in particular, unlike the last one, there is a good portion. So regarding the developer's development, I should say, a good portion of that area is already in the city limits, so there will be some sales tax return on this one versus the other one for the portions that are already in the city limits currently. So, but regarding an exact time frame on the return on investment, though, I don't have that figure off the top of my head for you.
But we will not be able to get any sales tax off that, correct?
So any kind of business in the area that's in red on your map, in that boundary that's currently outside city limits, that's the area where we would not collect sales tax from. Everything else outside the red is already in the city limits, so we would collect sales taxes from those areas. And in that case, a majority of the applicants' non-residential development, which is typically your big sales tax drivers, those are located in the portions that are already in the city limits currently.
Well, then I guess also you're going to see a pretty steep increase. I mean, this is residential, so whereas right now we're not getting much taxable value out of this property, but once residential goes in, that's going to increase a pretty good bit to hopefully help fund some of those services.
And the fortunate thing about the property taxes, we will collect those in the annexed area. So it's just that sales tax that we see that impact because of the county assistance district that they passed in 2018.
Brady, you may know this or you may not, but when you have a county that utilizes that 2 cent assistance, do they continue to provide those services that are being provided with that? So meaning fire is being provided through that 2 cents.
So essentially, when we annex it, they stop providing services, but the way the state set up that law, though, they still get to keep that sales tax, regardless if they're providing the services or not.
Okay.
And that's a deal where that's just the way the state structured that law based on our staff's research.
Okay. So, Councilman Sherlin, growth would pay for growth, meaning the developer's putting in the infrastructure, putting the new, let's say it's 500 customers. How many, Brady? 500 homes?
Yeah, a little over 500 is what they're projecting. Yep.
Say it's 550 customers into water service, drainage, trash payers, and then you're looking at your property tax. So you should be, like we say that with accuracy, that's what pays for those services out there, even without the sales tax, which we rely heavily on. We're only missing out on about a quarter of it. Any other questions for Mr. Kendrick?
Just one, Brady. Whenever you guys are working with developers and stuff like this, do you guys ever try to encourage, I'm going to use this one for example, to convey land for future fire stations?
Yes, so that actually did come up on this one in particular. We did communicate with the fire department on that, as the developer did ask if that would be something they could offer in this case. I know the fire department studying this portion of Amarillo in particular, they said that land within this area would not be located within where they were targeting for a new fire station in this part of Amarillo.
You said it would or would not?
Would not.
Okay.
That they were looking at something further south would be the more ideal location, but that actually did come up on this one in particular.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Kendrick? Okay, at this time we'll open a public hearing. Do I have anyone here who would like to speak for or against item 9B? Thank you, Mr. Kendrick. We'll go ahead and close the public hearing, having no one. Would ask for a motion on item 9B.
I'll make a motion. We accept item 8142 as stated on the agenda.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item passes. On to item 9C. We have Mr. Riddlesberger coming up here to talk us through CDBG, not to be confused with CBDCs or anything else.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Let me get my little thing here. So this is a public hearing for the annual plan for the Community Development Department. This is in reference to the CDBG Community Development Block Grant and Home Programs. These are annual grants that Amarillo receives. We are an entitlement community, which means that we receive these funds without applying. We get these every year. The grants are for low and moderate income people and neighborhoods. So that's, a lot of our public services, our nonprofits, decent housing. We do park and neighborhood projects and things of that nature. So this year we received $1,590,799 in CDBG funding and $697,926 in home funding for a total of $2,288,725. And remember that this is all federal grant money. This is no general funds at all. So I wanted to recognize our Community Development Advisory Committee. I've got at least 2 members here. Do I have any? 4? 3? Okay, great. I'm going to read out their names, and I'm going to have, if they're here, I want you to stand up, please. Jeanette Van Alstyne, she's our chair. Tommy Knox is our vice chair. There he is. Meg DeJongshire is not here. Amanda Holcomb is not here. Mara Kainoff and Maya Marujo are not here, but Kat Massey is here as well. So I just want to recognize that the hard work that they're doing for us on this CDAC committee, they're just fantastic committee members, and they're taking this very seriously to represent all of our community and do some really great work for them. So thank you guys for that.
Thank y'all.
And I'm going to take this opportunity to also recognize a couple of my staff members. Sam Hernandez and Saida Gonzalez, please stand up. These ladies work so hard. Every day they work so hard, and they're the ones that make this run smooth. So I'm so proud of them. So the CDAC is 7 representatives from the community. They review and score all of our public service applications. So public services are nonprofits that are applying for some of the funding. We can only give a capped amount of funding for the public services. I wish we could give more, because then we could get more out to our nonprofits. But we are capped with that. And then they also recommend the funding, which we're going to do today. So I'm going to just go over a few of these. This is our allocations that the CDAC has recommended for the public services. Guyon Saunders, the GSRC, $37,000. Martha's Home, $20,000. Maverick Boys and Girls Club, $20,000. Another Chance House, $10,000. Salvation Army, $17,000, and Amarillo Children's Home is a new nonprofit that we're funding this year. They're $15,393, and Coming Home, $119,309.92. That is annual that we do for Coming Home. Every one of those up there are, they've received funding before, so these are great nonprofits. They do great with reporting and doing all the things that we need them to do, so great partners. I just want to point out a few other things besides the public services that are really cool. Our CARE program, you may have heard of that. We've had it in the news recently. That has taken the place of our emergency repair grant that we used to have. Basically, it's critical repairs for folks that own their own homes, and they just can't afford these repairs that they really need to get fixed. Air conditioning, heater, some roof things, plumbing, things like that. It's a really great program. We've revamped it. We've written the policies and procedures a little bit different so we can get more funding out to more people that have never received it before. So I'm really proud of that program. We also have, I want to point out, we've partnered with Parks and Planning to do some really great projects with them. We're putting some of the funding towards neighborhood projects and some sidewalk projects. Habitat for Humanity is our only CHODO. That's the Community Housing Development Organization. They get our funding that we have available for that every year. We give them the full amount, which this year is $104,688.90. Great partners. We just need them to build more. We need more affordable housing. Tenant-based rental assistance, you can see that that's our highest funded amount, $488,000 and some change. That program right there has taken the place of a lot of our COVID folks that were really struggling during COVID to get them rental assistance. This has been really popular and is really helping us with our Coming Home program to get people out of homelessness into homes and then get them started on better paths. So this has been a really, really good program. So we had we posted our public hearing, and we did that on May 23rd with the CDAC. We've had our 30-day public comment period from May 31st to June 30th. We did not receive any comments, and now I put it before you for final consideration.
Any questions for Mr. Riddlesberger? Thank you, sir. We will open a public hearing on item 9C. Anyone here to speak for or against this item? Seeing no one, we'll close the public hearing, and I would ask for a motion.
I move to adopt resolution number 79-24-1.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. With no further discussion, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Item passes. Last and final one, item 9D. Should have Mrs. Coggins coming up here to walk us through what we're looking at here on the citizens petition.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. So we are here today kind of continuing our journey with this proposed ordinance that came as a petition to you. This first screen here just kind of gives some background, and I know the conversation has started long before the petition process did. But in December, we received the intent from the committee that they wanted to go collect signatures. In April, they brought those signatures back to us with a little over 10,000 signatures. We needed 4,888 to be valid, and in May we were able to validate that number of signatures existed. So on May 28th, we presented the petition to you, and on June 11th, y'all took action to reject that proposed ordinance. So on June 29th, we received an email from Steve Austin, a spokesman for the committee, and y'all have a copy of this in front of you. It's labeled 9D. And in that email, there is a certificate stating the committee's intent for this, their desire for it to go to the ballot and be voted on by our citizens. So the step we're on today is I am presenting this certificate to you with their desire to do so. You are not required as council to call the election today, and we plan to bring a resolution back on the consent agenda at your next council meeting. We'll have all the information in there. As a reminder, we work with our counties. We're very lucky to be able to contract with them. So we'll get some information from them. With Brian's help, we'll get all the information about the election into that resolution, and you'll see that on your consent agenda at the next meeting. This is just a little snapshot of what council has, and this was also included in the packet, so it's available online for our citizens if they wish to see it. So what I wanted to cover with you a little bit today is the possible ballot language for this. There are a couple sources that determine how we can do our ballot language. The first one is Texas Election Code. And what you'll see there, except as otherwise provided by law, the authority ordering the election shall prescribe the wording of a proposition that is to appear on the ballot. So you as city council is the authority. Y'all get to determine that language. A proposition shall be printed on the ballot in the form of a single statement and may appear on the ballot only once. So it's got to be a single statement. And then our city charter, and this is paragraph K from Article 2, Section 23 that we've been working under for initiative and referendum, says the form of ballot for use in an election held for the adoption of any initiated ordinance shall state the title of the ordinance and contain a succinct statement of its nature and purpose. And below such statement, on separate lines, there shall be printed the words for or against. So this just gives you the two sources that we have to set our ballot language under. This next screen right here is some proposed ballot language. It's an example for you. And to pull this example, we went back and with Brian's help, he helped me pull when Lubbock had this on their ballot a few years ago. And this is similar to the ballot language they had. Starts out with the Code of Ordinances of the City of Amarillo shall be amended by enacting an ordinance, and then it just lays out the caption that it's at the beginning of that ordinance that's proposed. So I would entertain any questions on this or any comments y'all might have.
Questions, council, from Mrs. Coggins?
When's the deadline that we have to do the call for the election?
We have to order it by August 19th.
Okay.
Any other questions, council?
Is this going to be the actual wording here?
If y'all are good with it, if we don't have any other questions or anything, this is what we would recommend. And we don't want to get it too lengthy. We want to keep it succinct and a single statement. And if we don't, then you risk it possibly being challenged.
Okay.
So
the problem I have with it, and I don't know if I stand on any grounds or not, but as we were told when they presented this to us, the meat of the ordinance was the travel ban. That's what the meat of it was. And I don't see anything in here stating what they're claiming the meat of their ordinance is, because we did try to negotiate that out, and that was a no-go for them. And I would think that that would need to be in the ordinance in some form or fashion. I don't know, but to me that raises a big question, because that was the one issue that was really brought forth, that was the main thing they wanted, was the travel ban. And the mayor offered several
Sessions.
Thank you. He offered several ways that we could do this, and we were basically told, no, the main meat of this ordinance is the travel ban. So if at all possible, I think that wording needs to be in there as, if we take Mark Dixon's 6 points and put it in, he's pretty well laid it out of what he's after, and I think his 6 points bring it to.
So let's go back here real quick. Ms. Coggins, can you flip back to the previous, a succinct statement, nature and purpose are the words that come out there. So what I hear you saying, Councilman Sherlin, is you feel like there is a need to present and inform the public the nature and purpose of it by stating what it does. But then I also see the succinct statement being a limitation of council, the bullet point, these 6 items. So I think in a paragraph or in a sentence format, council may have a calling to appeal to the nature and purpose of it by describing that. Go to the one previous, if you would. Prescribe the wording. So we are, a prescription of sense here needs to be a declaratory statement that shows the prescription of what this would do. And then nature and purpose is going to give the nature of it and the purpose of it. If you go one more forward, we'll go two more forward. Okay, so, as you have here, these are more or less the section headings, providing for various provisions, findings, severability, establishing effective date. I know that's typical language, but I think what we would do, counsel, since we have some time, I think we would take this to our attorney. We would ask our attorney to tell us, hey, what is a succinct statement that gives kind of the prescription and gives the nature and purpose based on what this 18-page ordinance does. We could get that put together. Everybody on council can visit, make sure that we're doing the one thing that we need to do. Council needs to inform the public so that they can vote accurately. And then beyond that, I don't think we have a role in it. I think the public, takes it from there. But in that ballot language, is that what I'm hearing from you, Councilman Sherlin, that you're wanting us to work towards?
Yes, sir. I just think by putting in here an ordinance declaring Amarillo a sanctuary city for the unborn is selling the whole thing from 18 pages to one sentence. It's not being told exactly to these citizens what they're actually voting for. And to me, that is a very, very important thing that the citizens need to understand the effect of what they're voting on.
Well, I appreciate that, Councilman, and I think our legal counsel, outside attorney specifically, would be the one that would probably have the most time and ability to work on this. And so we can move this that direction through staff and engage with Mr. Hyde and let him put something together and then bring it back.
Okay.
Now, Councilman Kraft had said, what is the deadline? Did you say August 17th?
August 19th.
19th.
Is the deadline.
So we would have two more council meetings that we could put this forward and formally call the election.
July 23rd or August 13th.
Okay. So we've got.
It's approved in one reading, or does it have to be
Yes, this is one. It'll be a resolution, so it'll be one reading. You're just, so we're transparent, your charter election, if we go forward with the charter amendment election, that will be two readings because that comes in an ordinance.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification on it so we don't forget. Councilman Tips?
Well, for clarification, the words travel ban do not appear anywhere in that ordinance. So I guess we can talk to the attorney and see. I mean, I understand what you're saying.
I think the attorney can come up.
100%. But that, just for clarification, it does not state that.
Yes, it doesn't
Nor
say
is it
travel ban.
So,
but we all know what Steve Austin said up here.
Yeah.
And he was the representative of the initiating committee.
But it's what's stated in the ordinance is what matters.
I understand,
Not what's
but
stated
that's
out
what
there.
that's what it implies.
Yeah, I hear you, but it's not what's stated. Okay.
So, Councilman Tips, you will be able to offer as well as everybody else. And I think that we try to work together on it to put the ballot language down to where it says what it says, means what it says, doesn't get caught up in maybe the discussions that we've had prior to. But legal attorney, we're going to need them to go ahead and put this forward. And we're going to rely on them to tell us what is a succinct statement and what does declare a nature or purpose. And then we'll bring it back to you, council. We don't have to take any action on this today, but it has been presented. And then would ask if council has anything further, comment, remark, or question for Mrs. Coggin.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Good job.
Absolutely.
Councilman Simpson, you're good down there.
I'm good.
Okay. Hey, thank you, Stephanie. Okay, well, since item 9D has no formal action, I would ask for a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn this meeting.
Second.
Motion and a second, you're adjourned. Hey, get your papers out of my way.